Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, item 1, announcement by the Mayor and Chief Exec. We will be having a break at 7 o'clock for 10 minutes. Okay. Half an hour. Okay. Item 2, are there any apologies for absence, please? Councillor Sokal.
Apology from Councillor Fran Perry, Councillor Webb Kendrick, and Fajila Lunat, and Councillor Sarwa. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Councillor Lukic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Charles Greaves and Councillor Paul White.
Thank you. Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies received from Councillor John Taylor, Councillor Kath Taylor and Councillor Donald Firth.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Anwar.
Apologies from Councillor Fark, but he's stuck in traffic on his way.
So he's on his way. Okay. Thank you for that, Councillor. We've also got apologies from Councillor Warner as well. Thank you for that. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 12th of October 2022 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Please vote by show of hands. As carried. Thank you. Members who have any disclosable pecuniary interest which would prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interest now. Are there any interests to declare? No? Okay, thank you. Item 5, petitions from members of the council. Are there any petitions? No. Thank you. Sorry. That's not the... No. No. Wrong time. They're public. Too keen. Okay. Deputations and petitions. Item 6. We have 2 deputations this evening. Please can I invite Actor Cassia to please come forward and present his deputation. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Cassia. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to the council.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Atta. I'm the co-chair for the Downs and Special Friends group. We are based in Batley, Dewsbury, Kirklees area. This is my son. He's 18 and his name is, what's your name? Come on.
Ayub and Atia.
Ayub Cassia.
Yeah.
Good evening, I'm Joan Palmer and I'm co-chair of Downs and Special Friends, and the reason I got involved with this group was that I foster, and I now foster, or I've done for quite a few years, foster children with special needs. So that's why I got involved with this group. And this is
Brandon Wilkinson.
And I am a foster carer for Brandon. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Mohammed Rafa, and I am the Vice Chair of Towns and Special Friends and Group. My association with the group is because I actually have a toddler who's 3 years old now, who was born with Down syndrome, and he's been a member of this group since he was 3 weeks old. Thank you. So if you have not heard of us, we are Downs and Special Friends Group, a non-profit support group run by the group's own volunteers within the North Kirklees vicinity. Children with special needs and learning difficulties are often too honest and sadly are unable to conceal their weakness and mistakes. Not only does this make it harder for them, but also on their immediate families too. These families now then struggle to manage their behavior and their feelings. Does this emotionally impact the parenting of a child with special needs? Absolutely, it does. Additionally, children with special needs encounter stigma and discrimination in their communities, at school, among friends, and within their own families as well. And to combat this very own stereotype and to eradicate the stigma, this is the reason why Downs and Special Friends Group was founded in 2016 with a mission to help and support families and their children with special needs by hosting activities to suit all children and ages of all groups. Our group is inclusive regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, religion, or disability, and this is the very reason why we now have today over 250 members within our group.
But tonight, Downs and Special Friends Group, a support group that is funded entirely by donation, most importantly needs your support with our short-term and immediate aim. This is for us to set up a Downs and Special Friends Group space along with a community cafe run and supported by our group members such as Ayub, Brandon and other special needs children and their families. A community hub if we must say so. Not will this allow group members to spend time with people in the community, but also an opportunity to learn a life skill. Why? Because currently there is nothing available within North Kirklees where our members and their families can enjoy and socialize, mainly in evenings and weekends. Additionally, we would love for you to be our mentor and open the doors of opportunities to help us achieve our aims and ambitions so that we can bring about the positive change that is required together in the vicinity. Your support means our members and their families are facilitated and are not just merely a burden on a state.
So this is why we've actually reached out, because this is the help that we actually need as part of our group as well. So in closing, respected councillors, thank you very much for inviting Downs and Special Friends tonight. We would also like to take this opportunity to extend our appreciation for the support that we received from councillors Fazila Lunat and also Habib and Zaman as well, and then of course our own Mayor Masood as well. Should you have any questions about our support group, how you can actually get involved, or anything else, please do not hesitate to get in contact or get in touch with ourselves. We will be leaving our details behind, so and you can also find our details on our website as well. Again, we've not been able to distribute that tonight, but we will certainly leave that details behind. Thank you.
Any questions, guys? Sorry.
Do you want to just stay there?
As you can see, this is the first time we've deputized, and hopefully it won't be the last time as well. I can guarantee that.
We were very quick to go, Akhtar. Karen, would you like to respond? Sorry, I've got Councillor Patterson then.
Councillor Viv Kendrick, who would be responding, but unfortunately she's not here tonight. But so I'm responding on her behalf because I also have responsibility for children's services alongside herself. So thank you. I must thank you, Mr. Razak and Mr. Kazia for coming tonight with your friends and with your sons. And telling us about the work of your group. I did go on the website beforehand and have a look and you know, to find out a bit more about the activities that you do put on, and they're obviously very worthwhile and very much enjoyed by your members. And I do understand that you're also trying to rebuild yourselves a bit after the pandemic, etc., etc. So welcome tonight, and certainly we'll be in touch with you to see how we can support you in the future.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for attending the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I please invite Hassan Badat to please come forward and present his deputation? Welcome to the meeting, Hassan. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're very honourable Mayor. Congratulations on your appointment. First time I've been here since you were appointed. My name is Hassan Badat. I'm here as an individual, but also representing Snowdon Mosque, which is based in Batley. I wanted to talk briefly about the situation, particularly regarding burials and cemeteries. I know you have managers and officers who do regular consultation with the community, but on a personal level, with COVID and when some of the meetings became online and things, I personally stopped attending. But I have been a bit alarmed by what I've been hearing and reading recently in terms of provisions, future provisions of burial spaces, not exactly in my town, which is Batley, but in neighbouring town of Dewsbury. But having said that, we're all interconnected. We just are. We're all interconnected. If one cemetery is full, there's a chance people will go on to the next burial place, wherever that might be. Now, my main point is there anyone within council that's been looking into all the things that's involved here? And there is lots of things involved. The burial rate, mortality rate, where people are choosing to have their loved ones end up, because in the past it was a bit slightly different picture, where some people, especially from the Muslim Pakistani community, I should say, used to take the loved ones to the home nation, as it were. And obviously within the non-Muslim community as well, there's a gathering of momentum in terms of people going on to cremation as a choice rather than burial. We do need to provide for that and well in advance. If you look at basic stark figures, I don't know if anyone's as yet done a bit of an analysis in terms of what's come up with the 2021 census, was it? But I think from what I know from the Office of National Statistics, in Batley alone there is 16,500 Muslim people, and I think 25,000 Muslim people in Dewsbury. The reason I'm highlighting Muslim is because each and every one of them, unless they decide to leave the area, will be probably choosing for the burial rather than cremation. And if you look at the number of spaces, I know in Batley we've had recently been fortunate to get a bit of extra space, but it's all filling fast as well. The death rate is not as it was 20 years ago. It's at a much speedier pace, as it were, and someone needs to start planning for that now before it gets into a serious disaster. So I would request the council to put someone on into at least doing some kind of a base study. I know it's not that long ago since you did the audit of land, the local action plan, whatever it was called, but how do you start marrying up things like that into future provision of burial places? I'll leave it as that, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Badat. Can I invite Councillor Simpson to respond, please?
For the mic, sorry. Firstly, Mr. Badat, thank you very much for being with us at this meeting this evening, and thank you for your deputation on what's a really important issue. So I really did listen and do appreciate what you've said. Firstly, I want to give you the Council's full assurance that we will continue to ensure that we deliver for our communities through our bereavement services. In total, at the moment, there are approximately 1,000 burial spaces available at our cemeteries in Dewsbury alone. And based on the current death rates and demographic figures that we have, this capacity will last us for several years yet. And I would invite you to look at our strong record of delivery on this issue as well. Through the established bereavement forum, which you referred to in your deputation, the Council does work with stakeholders collaboratively and cooperatively to review our bereavement services estate. In recent years, this has resulted in and included investment at Hay Lane Cemetery, new cremators at Dewsbury and Huddersfield. We've got the new Muslim cemetery at the old bottle factory site in Batley, which I'm sure you're aware of. We've got the natural burial ground adjacent to liversidge ceremony and wider improvements in our cemetery estates as well. We've never allowed ourselves to fall short on this issue and will continue to do so. As we've demonstrated previously, the Council is willing to invest in new facilities when they're required, and future provision at Dewsbury will be considered through the bereavement forum and the work that we do, as with the investments that we've done previously. But I want to give you this clear message and clear assurance now that we have around 1,000 spaces at the moment in Dewsbury alone, and we'll continue to work with our partners to make sure that that work, delivering the burial spaces that we need and through our bereavement services, continues to deliver for our communities. But thank you again for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Thank you, Councillor Badat, for your deputation. Thank you. Are there any public petitions? No. Okay. Item 7, public question time. We have a question from Dewsbury Cemetery Action Group. Welcome to the meeting. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Peace and blessings be upon all of you. My name is Zaid Kahoot. I'm here to represent and voice the concerns of people in Dewsbury, which has been taken up by the Dewsbury Multi-Faith Action Group. As some of you may or may not be aware, there's been a lot of publicity with reference to the rapidly depleting burial space in the Dewsbury Cemetery. It was on the calendar news within the last week. I don't know if any of you saw it. So you did see it, yeah? Fantastic. So my understanding is from the Council's own statistics, we have reserves in terms of burial space for up to the next 12 to 18 months. And what's happened is, we're all aware we've faced unprecedented times in the last 2 years, and it's been very difficult for all of us. But there could be another virus, there could be another strain. And our question to the Council today is, what factors does the Council take into consideration when deciding on burial space, and what provisions does the Council have, and plans and strategies does it have to cater for this need beyond the next 18 months? That's my question. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining and for your question. As I mentioned in response to the previous deputation from Mr. Badat, we use the demographic information that we have as a council, and we use the information that we have around death rates and the space that we have available to provide a projection. As mentioned in my previous response, at the moment we have around 1,000 spaces in Dewsbury alone for burial, and we believe that will last us for the next 6 to 7 years. I hope that will give you some reassurance, but as I said in the previous response, of course we don't sit on our hands in these things. We'll continue to work with our partners to make sure that we build on that and continue to deliver for the future.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I mean, friend has referred to 1,000 spaces and sufficient provision for the next 6 years. My information is that by the Council's own statistics, it's between 12 and 18 months, and all it would take is for another strain of this virus, and we could find ourselves in a very difficult situation. My second and supplementary question is this, that does the Council agree that a cemetery forms the heart of a community for people of all faiths. It brings communities together, and it's essential. Does the council not agree that it's essential for a cemetery which serves the community to be within that community?
Councillor Simpson.
Absolutely agree. Cemeteries are a very important place. That's why we take our duties around that so seriously. That's why we've invested in them so significantly in recent years, and why I really appreciate you coming to speak to me about it today. So I hope what I've already said can give you some reassurance. As I say, we have got 6 to 7 years on the current space that we've got, and as I say, we will continue to invest in that. As you say, cemeteries and bereavement is a really important part of what we do. It's a really important part of my portfolio, and I'm willing to continue to have a dialogue with anyone who wants to engage through the bereavement forum to make sure that we continue to deliver on that.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Thank you for attending the meeting as well.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
ladies and
Thank
gentlemen.
you. We have a question from Heather Peacock. Welcome to the meeting, Heather. Please ask your question.
I want to ask a question about the A629 Phase 5 cancellation or pause situation. As a group, we are absolutely delighted that the H8 trees at the Black Road Junction are now safe. With 38 trees to be felled further along the A629, is the planned woodland at Ainley Top still going ahead? This new woodland was to include 650 young trees and species-rich hedgerows.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping at some point in this meeting someone else will get a chance to speak. Thank you very much, Heather, for your question. It's nice to see you, and I hope you're well. In my view, when we've got a site that's been allocated for tree planting, whether that's for mitigation or as part of other plans with regard to our tree planting, I and we as an administration are ambitious about our plans. We're leading White Rose Forest for a reason, and it's my view that that should therefore go ahead. So that's my position on that, and I hope that gives you some reassurance.
Cheers.
I presume she does. She's happy? Okay. Are there any further public questions? Yes, we've got a few more. Mr. Badat. Please ask your question, Mr. Badat.
Thank you very much, Chair, for this opportunity again. A very quick one. I set off for this meeting today about well before 4, and I just barely managed to get here, and I was panicking and trying to get messages across to people to say, I don't want to travel all this way and miss the meeting. My question is, I've been attending this meeting for decades, really, probably more than a lot of the people here. And it occurred to me, why is it that I always have to do this kind of a mad rush, sometimes a smooth rush, especially in my Bangor car? And why are these meetings not held in the other end of the borough, if that's what it's called? I mean, we have lost so many things in terms of long-standing buildings that we had. Surely there should be buildings available, spaces, to at least on a alternating basis have such meetings like this. Never mind this, there's hardly any subcommittee meetings, which they used to be, not really that long ago, you know, about 10 years ago. So has anyone been looking into this? Has the councillors of North Kirklees been talking on our behalf? I mean, we're lucky that we've got the mayor and the leader who are from North Kirklees, and by definition, almost half the councillors are from North Kirklees, if not all the staff. So is there any plans to have similar meetings, well, this meeting in the North Kirklees area?
Councillor Simpson, shall I bring you back in, or shall I go to the leader? Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Hassan, for your question. And we have had meetings in the past in North Kirklees, and everything else you said, I'm sure a lot of the councillors will agree with you in principle. But we will continue to look at that. What we try and do is we try and improve and open up democracy where we can. But thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll look at it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Badat?
Yeah, thank you for that response, Sabir. But when have you had a major meeting? I know I already said that you've had some kind of meetings, subcommittee meetings, but we need a full council. Let's not marginalise North Kirklees. We are half of the borough, if that's what it's still called. Can you say when, for example, there will be a full council meeting in the North Kirklees end? It can be even midway in Murfield or something.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we have heavy one on planning committee meetings, which are always held in North Kirklees. And we have had council meetings in Dewsbury, in Batley, in Cleckheaton, and if situation arises again, I'm sure we can look at that. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
Situations arising now.
Thank you, Councillor Badat. Thank you, Mr. Badat.
Thank you.
He was himself, he's the last question. He was a bit of a mumble at the end.
Some more. Do you want to state your name, please?
My name is Mohammed Javed.
Okay, please ask your question.
Yes, sure. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Lord Mayor, for the opportunity. So my question is, if there's 1,000 unconfirmed burial spaces and it's a short-term solution to serve a large population, does the council intend on making an exhaustive effort to provide its residents with a municipal cemetery as a solution? And if there are 1,000 spaces, are they owned by the council?
Councillor Simpson, that is you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so we do have 1,000 spaces. As I've said, that will last 6 to 7 years. As I've said, we're absolutely committed to making sure that continues. We're not just going to let that amount deplete down to nothing and then have no burial spaces. So, as I've said, the council is absolutely committed to doing that in the years to come.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the 1,000 spaces in Dewsbury, whereabouts are there in Dewsbury? Because I can't see the 1,000 spaces in Dewsbury Cemetery.
Councillor Simpson.
These are council-owned and run by the council itself. Yeah, sorry.
So around half of the spaces are owned by the council, around half are on land that the council released to the community.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
You can close that door now.
You've got another question, yeah?
No.
Can't close it, can I?
Give me the key and I'll lock it.
Thank you very much.
Can we have quiet, please? Thank you. Do you want to state your name and question,
my name
please?
is Sajid Hussain, and I'm a community activist, Dewsbury. Burial space, obviously, a burning issue, and is very close to my heart. My question is, I've got a written question, if you don't mind. Do the council acknowledge and understand the concern of various faiths and community in Kirklees regarding burial space? If so, can the council summarize their approach or understanding of this?
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Hussain, for joining the meeting. Thank you very much for your question. Absolutely, what you've said, completely agree with it. And as I've said, we have our bereavement forum. Through that, we work with all faith groups and groups with no faith to make sure that we're delivering through our bereavement services and in terms of burial space and other things that are related to the bereavement service. So we absolutely appreciate and agree with what you said in your question. And anyone who wants to engage with us and has any concerns is more than welcome to join the bereavement forum to make sure that we can all work together going forward.
Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Hussain?
Lord Mayor, I probably have to repeat my question again because I'm going to get the answer for my particular question. If you don't mind, I will repeat that again, so for your understanding. My question is, does the council acknowledge and understand the concerns of various faith and community in Kirklees regarding burial space? If so, can council summarize their approach or understanding of this?
Councillor Simpson.
Well, I feel I did answer it because I said yes. I absolutely agreed with your question. We do understand the concern. I feel that I've addressed that quite strongly in what I've said thus far. And anyone who's got any concerns of whatever faith, we work across partners, businesses, voluntary sector, all of that. Anyone who's interested and has a concern, we work through our bereavement forum to make sure that we're doing that cooperatively, cross-community, cross-faith, and anyone who has a concern would be more than welcome to join us on that and make sure that we're continuing to deliver on top of the 6 to 7 years of burial space that we've got remaining in Dewsbury thus far.
Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one person that wants to come in. Well, it's up to you. Time's up at 5:30.
Time is actually up for public questions.
This is my second appearance and I've still not managed to get my question in, Lord Mayor, so if I could quickly address...
Okay, I'm happy to take one more question.
Final question.
Thank you.
Good evening, and peace and blessings be upon you all. My name is Halim Akbar and I appear on behalf of the Dewsbury Cemetery Multi-Faith Action Group. Councillor Simpson, is it? Sorry. Earlier you said that there are 1,000 spaces and then you've conceded to my friend that half of this is council-owned land and half of it you mentioned that it's elsewhere. Now, that specific land, if you're referring to private land which is not managed or handled by the council, then that is private-owned land. Why is that being included in the municipal cemetery of Dewsbury? So could you kindly clarify whether municipal cemetery burial space is 1,000 or whether it's 500 in fact, and do you believe that that is sufficient to serve the interests of the Dewsbury community, which is obviously a larger population?
Councillor Simpson.
So it's all within Dewsbury Cemetery. As I said, 50% of it is council-owned. The land that isn't is land that we have worked with the Muslim Burial Council to make sure that it's available for the community. So it is 6 to 7 years, and all of that is there for the Dewsbury community.
Just to clarify then, you are including the private Muslim burial space at the top, which will not serve the our brothers and sisters of the Christian faith, of the Jewish faith, and any other faith who wish to bury. Is that correct?
Councillor Simpson.
The burial space is burial space of people for people of...
Respectfully, it's segregated in accordance with the...
Yes, but when I'm giving you the figure in terms of the amount of burial space that there is in Dewsbury, I'm referring to all faiths. Yes.
Including the cemetery at the top?
Yes.
Which is private owned?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 8, page 11, overview and scrutiny annual report 2021-22. Can we have one conversation, please? One conversation, please. Thank you. Thank you. Please, can I invite Councillor Smaid to introduce the annual report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to propose that Council receives and notes the Overview and Scrutiny Annual Report 21-22. The report highlights key themes and outcomes that each of the panels undertook during that year. We had in-person meetings throughout the year, but we continue to use technology to help attendees join remotely. This continues through this year as well and allows witnesses to attend without needing to travel, and also helps panel members and officers where necessary. I would like to thank co-optees, councillors, those giving evidence to the panels, governance officers and the 21-22 lead members for all their valuable contributions and hard work. I would like to invite current lead members to talk about each panel, as well as Councillor Richard Smith to talk about the West Yorkshire Combined Authority scrutiny, and then I will come back with some comments following that. So in the order then, can I ask first Councillor Marchinson, then Councillor Ramsey, then Councillor Hussain, and then Councillor Smith to say a few words, and I will return after that. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Marchinson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, colleagues on the council have had a chance to read through the report, but I just want to draw out some highlights. I want to start off by thanking everybody who's made a fantastic contribution to the Children and Young People's Scrutiny panel this year, particularly two of our co-optees who retired in that year group, Dale O'Neill and Linda Summers. Dale had been involved with the Children's Scrutiny panel for a long period of time, so provided significant continuity on that panel and asked some really interesting questions. And one of the pleasures of seeing things improve over time was Dale's question about children's voice. And we did see when the local authority was going through issues around children's services a number of years ago, that was one of the issues where it just seemed to be a tick box exercise. And actually what we have seen is how using and understanding children's voice in various situations has led to much better outcomes for children and young people. So we really appreciated Dale continually asking that question over the years. And Linda Summers, who was, I think, a sector co-optee governor at Huddersfield New College, had some really pertinent and poignant questions about educational outcomes, particularly for post-16 education. And again, that's contributed to our ongoing scrutiny. I also want to thank the contributions of two new members in particular, both Elizabeth Reynolds and Jackie Ramsey. I noticed that Jackie's gone on from being a member of the Children's Panel to chairing her own. Where's Jackie? Chairing her own panel? Yeah, hope you. But again, in terms of the visits that we've done, both Elizabeth and Jackie undertook visits on their own to triangulate some of the information we're getting. Jackie's questions on children looked after, particularly around ethnicity, took us quite a while to get the information in, and officers have thought really hard about that, but we have got some interesting data there that we're going to continue to scrutinise. So thank you for your not being, asking those questions as a new member of the panel and being persistent with that, and appreciating it takes a while sometimes for things to work through. So one of the key things about the way that Children's Panel does scrutiny is we're spending less time in the council chamber listening to long reports. It's taken a little while, and we spent more time going out, visiting frontline workers to triangulate what we've seen. And that's actually been a really good experience for ourselves, going out and seeing people working with children and young people. Our first visit, significant visit, was up to Northorpe Hall, looking at children's mental health. That was good. But visiting the frontline social work team based in Slathwaite Town Hall, and we met middle managers, we met frontline workers. It was interesting to see how they coped with continually protecting children and young people during COVID. And what that enabled us to do is to triangulate the information we got from service directors like Elaine McShane and from the Director of Children's Services, Mel Meggs, and actually just see what was happening out in those areas. And I think the particular highlight for us is actually seeing the way that people working with children put their own professional judgment and expertise open to the scrutiny of their peers. So actually we weren't necessarily scrutinising individual pieces of work, but witnessing scrutiny going on. And that for me is a really positive. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're seeing staff doing that. And that was echoed throughout the visits. So the visit to the front door team up in the Civic Centre, we actually got to stay to watch them looking at, observe a meeting where they were scrutinising cases. And that was a partnership working between health, police and the local authority. And I was particularly impressed about the way that people, again, use their professional judgment, but that of peers. So that work between social services and police, between police and health, between health and the council, and again, just relying on others' professional expertise to make sure that we get the best outcomes for children and young people. And I think, although all of this is a journey and partnership working with, because it's very complex, it was really good to see that. And I know Councillor Reynolds, some of the other stuff we'd seen, I was just very impressed about staff being willing to open themselves up to that degree of scrutiny in the widest possible sense. One of the other many interesting highlights, I suggest you look at the multi-systemic therapy team. It's a very large investment on the behalf of the council for that. And it's actually the supervisor, lead supervisor, is from Seattle. So you're asking, why are we doing that? Why are we buying that in? But it's a model that works very effectively. I got to sit in on a supervision in the afternoon. I was invited to do that. It was very interesting to participate in that, listen to the supervision going on. And I actually got a chance to meet Simon Fox when he was over from Seattle. I think he was fresh off the plane from Manchester. So I'm really pleased that he did that. But it's a really...
You're out of time, but how long have you
sorry,
got?
I didn't realise I had the time limit.
You spoke so well.
No, sorry.
I just thought, just let you know.
Oh, I'm out of time. Well, I can... Anyway, so I think I will. If I can just do it briefly, it'll take me. But the point about the way that we do scrutiny to achieve the best outcomes for children, and this issue about going out and seeing what is going on, listening to parents, carers, children, young people, has been a really successful way for us to triangulate and actually be part of the improvement journey, which I think we all want to be on. So, sorry. Right, fine.
Thank you for that, Councillor Marchington. Councillor Ramsey.
Okay, I promise Councillor Smurge I'll be slightly shorter than Councillor Marchington. You'll see... You'll see from the report that the Kirklees Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny panel last year had a very busy year. They met 7 occasions between July and March. All of the meetings were virtual. I'm just going to focus on a few things that they did and link to the work that's been done this year. And I have to start with COVID-19. If we put our minds back to 2021, we were very much concerned about what was happening with the Delta variant, getting the first vaccine rollout, moving on to the booster. And I think scrutiny heard just how hard public health were working with the whole health and care system, community champions, the voluntary sector, to do things like surge testing in a bid to identify asymptomatic spread and to encourage the uptake of vaccinations. What we've all seen and what scrutiny saw was how the pandemic highlighted and exacerbated the inequalities that we've got across the communities. The panel heard just about feedback on the toll that COVID-19 was having on NHS and social care workforce. Not just that there was increased sickness levels due to infection and the requirement to self-isolate, but also to staff distress requiring additional support. There were other things that were focused on. Suicide prevention was covered from a mental health perspective, and they gained the understanding of how complex it is to prevent. Very sadly, 75% of suicides are men. Most are single, most live alone. 60% will have depression, and only 22 of those taking their own life will have shared that with someone. Suicide victims often cite relationship breakdowns, illness, or work as a reason. The panel supported recommendations about training for all, either through Northorpe Hall with a children's focus or through the Zero Suicide Alliance online training, which is more general. In addition, the panel have looked at how health and social care should become more integrated and heard the progress at the front door around gateway to care from an adult social care point of view and local, a single point of access from a community health point of view and how they were coming together. They also started to focus on what was happening out at primary care networks and bringing other people in to support primary care around the support that is needed for patients and for those in the community. This year, clearly, we're building on the good work that's been done by the panel last year, gaining a clear understanding of the impacts that COVID-19 has left with the suppressed demand and backlogs. We're also aware of the key concerns around health and social care, around workforce, with the inability to recruit, retention concerns, staff burnout, etc., all of which is having a real impact on the aspects of the system. And I'll not go into what else I'd written there, because I promised to be shorter. However, you also asked me, Liz, to report back on the West Yorkshire Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'll be short on this one. To be honest, at a West Yorkshire level last year, we focused mainly on the development of the West Yorkshire Integrated Care Board. It represents a key restructure in the NHS, moving away from a commissioner-provider model to a much more collaborative approach, with the clinical commissioning group ceasing to exist at the end of June this year. The statutory body is now at a West Yorkshire level with the Integrated Care Board, and Kirklees Health and Care Partnership is the place-based strategic unit. Other things were discussed at West Yorkshire, from a West Yorkshire perspective. We looked at ambulance services, we looked at workforce, and we looked at the Nightingale Hospital in Harrogate that was set up, if you remember, for COVID and then was never used. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, speaking as the new chair of the Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny Panel for 2022-2023, but also as a panel member for the reporting year, I want to thank all panel members, co-optees and outgoing chair for their commitment to the work of the panel and contributions to effective scrutiny through their thoughtful and thorough consideration of the complex and important issues put before them. In the municipal year 2021-2022, there are also still challenges arising from COVID-19 pandemic and adjusting to the new ways of working. And so I also want to express a special gratitude to the panel and officers for their dedication in overcoming these challenges and for the continuing to do so as we return to the new normal. Over the last year, we considered and made recommendations on a range of topics and policy areas, and some highlights can be found in the report. The key priorities of the panel in 2021 and 2022 included environmental issues relating to the new Kirklees resources and waste strategy, as well as looking at major developments such as regeneration of our town centres and local issues such as the winter maintenance and playable spaces. In 2021 and 2022, we also saw the receipt of one calling of an executive decision relating to the Cooper Bridge Improvement Corridor, which this panel considered, and decision was to be referred to Cabinet with a number of recommendations which were accepted in full. This year, as the new chair of this panel, I'm keen to prioritise early engagement with scrutiny wherever possible. It is also important to continue to consider Cabinet priorities and give consideration to the underlying national context, such as climate change and the cost of living crisis. I'll continue. This year, we have welcomed a number of new panel members and co-optees to assist in its consideration of a diverse portfolio through meaningful debate across a wide range of subjects. So far, this has included looking at key policies such as Kirklees District Heat Network and the Climate Change Action Plan, and more recently received an update on the progress on the bus station projects for Huddersfield, Dewsbury and Hempton Wyke, where we were joined by officers from the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The panel also looks forward to considering a variety of environmental matters, such as the environmental safety strategy, the tree policy and the EV charging infrastructure, as well as giving input into the up-and-coming culture, tourism and heritage strategies, and other areas such as road safety and ground maintenance. I'd like to end with thanking all panel members again for their support, and I look forward to working with you throughout the rest of the year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. I've got you going for twice for the corporate one as well. I'll do that at the end. That's fine. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Apologies for being late earlier on. Traffic was bad. So I'm going to speak briefly about, and I will be brief, about the West Yorkshire scrutiny. Now, it's slightly different in West Yorkshire. I've been associated with West Yorkshire Scrutiny for probably 3 years now, first as a panel member, and for the last 18 months or so I've chaired the economy scrutiny. Last May, there was a significant change. We had an elected mayor in Tracy Brabin, and since that point, the scrutiny arrangements have changed. So now we have 3 scrutiny committees. We used to have 1. So I'd like to also echo what other people have said about thanking colleagues for taking part. We've historically been fairly well represented from Kirklees councillors, and obviously I've had to work with people from across the political divide, and we've had a really good relationship as well from Kirklees. So former councillors Harpreet Tupal and Paul Kane, I got to know pretty well through West Yorkshire Authority, and we struck a friendship as well, which was nice. And obviously we've got Tyler and others who've just recently joined us, so I'm hoping that will continue. Because what we do as a scrutiny is well above party politics and local interests. It's all about the region as a whole. And obviously we all go into bat for our own authorities to an extent, myself included. But what I try to do as chair of the committee is to try and keep it completely apolitical. Obviously you can't hide your feelings, but you know, we try to keep it totally honest and be a critical friend to the authority. There's a massive budget, a huge amount of money is devolved to the West Yorkshire Authority, and it's split into 3 separate pots, which I'll come on to in a second. But the role of scrutiny is very important. You know, I call it a critical friend, but we get the opportunity as a committee once per year to speak to Tracy Brabin, the mayor. And I don't see that as an opportunity to get her in a room to ask her awkward questions. I see that as an opportunity to try and work alongside the mayor, who's been elected, to offer some critical, you know, some friendly advice if we're able to, and to scrutinise what her plans are and to see whether she's actually on track to achieving them. So I'll briefly explain what the 3 committees are. I'll come to my one on the last point because I know a little bit more about it. So when the committees were split into 3, they were split into transport and infrastructure, which is all about the physical assets, which obviously includes buses, rail, road, bikes, etc., and a big part on active travel. There's some large infrastructure projects in there, some planning and housing. It's a bit subtle as well because obviously planning is within the gift of the local authority. But Tracy, one of her pledges was to build houses, amongst other things. She's made 10 pledges actually, so I'll come back to that point as well. There is another committee which used to be sort of an overall committee before they were split, and that's the corporate scrutiny committee. That's more of a remit now on plans and policies, on big projects involving finance and technology and procurement of big assets and things like that. So the corporate topic areas for this year, they've listed a few. I'll just pick out a couple of that. It's inflation, budget and gain share, which is effectively money that's devolved from the government and passed on to various projects. Accommodation and other corporate projects. The Transport and Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee is looking at the bus service improvement plan, active travel, decarbonisation and behaviour change, freight, waterways and rail, and consultation and planning. And the reason I'm mentioning these is that between the 3 chairs, one of them being myself, we have regular meetings and we try and make sure that we don't overlap what each scrutiny committee is doing. So it's quite important. I mean, if you look at mine, for example, the economy, there's a lot of stuff within the authority's remit that I could actually talk about with the economy, but I try and keep it really tailored so it keeps a separation. There's quite a lot of work goes into planning this with the officers. So my remit this year is to look at the state of the region's economy, the cost of living crisis, a labour market assessment, and skills and adult education budget. And that's fairly wide, but we do drill down into, we have some specific reports written for us, and very detailed reports that take a lot of looking through. And you know, it's really quite an interesting thing to be involved in. And if you do it properly, you get quite a lot out of it. So I think really that's all I wanted to say about that. I don't know how brief I have been.
Sir, you've took the 5 minutes. Councillor Smith, you took the 5 minutes. You've been brief. Are there any comments?
No,
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, thank you. I asked Councillor Smith if he'd give an outline of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority work, because I really think it's important that we get a view across Kirklees and West Yorkshire as well of scrutiny, because we mention about health scrutiny across West Yorkshire, so I wanted also to include the Combined Authority scrutiny as well, so I hope that was all right with everybody else. Can I mention the corporate panel, please, because Councillor Taylor is not here tonight. So the corporate panel looked at the technology and people strategies, as well as the council plan in detail, and they looked at finance. And you'll see that there are some comments in there from co-optees and the former lead member as well of the scrutiny panel. Thank you for that, about the corporate panel's work. Okay. Can I mention about the Calderdale and Kirklees Joint Health Committee? It met twice in August and November, and as you'll see from the report, we continue to have updates on the reconfiguration programme timelines, engagement, demand for services, and how the pandemic was impacting and informing reconfiguration plans. The panel is continuing to meet and hear evidence on the reconfiguration plans. We put meetings in when we have information that we can discuss from CHFT, and we've got plans to meet again in January of this year, hopefully. We had one ad hoc in 21-22, which was into health and safety compliance in the residential housing stock, which was considering policies, procedures and arrangements for managing the health and safety of tenants and the property portfolio, residential property portfolio, with a particular focus on high-rise and multiple occupation blocks. And I hope that the report from this panel will actually shortly be going through to Cabinet. Mentioned in the OSMC work is something that we're doing this year on loneliness and social isolation in Kirklees. Something that I feel really strongly, a piece of work I feel really strongly about. And we've been talking to officers within the council, but we've also been talking to partners and groups that meet in Kirklees. And if any councillor knows of any groups that they think might be interested in having a discussion about loneliness, then please do get in touch with us. It's about hearing different voices, and one of the questions we're asking is, how can we make loneliness everyone's business? Okay. As mentioned, we did have a call-in last year. Call-in is a valuable part of scrutiny. However, call-ins should not be needed if we are able to have full scrutiny in place. Last year, I spoke of the need to develop more pre-decision scrutiny, and the report covers areas where panels did indeed have more pre-decision scrutiny. Moving forward, we need to build on this, and we are looking at more of this work during this year. We need to be able to have work programmes that give space for that pre-decision work, as well as being able to have an overview and scrutiny role for decisions taken. I do believe that this is the way forward to give a critical friend input at an early stage. Scrutiny is not about politics, but is about being that critical friend that needs to be a valuable part of the decision-making process. My thanks once again to everyone who's been involved in scrutiny during the year 21-22 and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have now finished.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any comments or questions? And we have Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I apologise for being a bit late? If you know anybody in the council who has any responsibility or authority over the roads, certainly Huddersfield Ring Road was a bit like the cabinet. It wasn't going anywhere today.
I was late myself as well.
You was late? In your car, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We'll have to get a tandem next time. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank colleagues for the presentations, and particularly the ones where we acknowledge the work that the co-optees have done. Certainly sitting on scrutiny, I value the input from people who have not directly involved. I think topically, Mr Mayor, reflecting on what we've just mentioned, I would draw colleagues' attention to the report from page 45 onwards about Cooper Bridge. We need to be looking in this council about how major roadworks are impacting on our community. At the last council, I highlighted the comments that Riva had made that roadworks are stopping the bus services operating regular and reliable bus services. And this major project has got the impact to do that. I'll draw colleagues' attention to comments made from the panel on page 34, where technical questions should have been answered at Cabinet prior to decision making. I think that was a flaw, and I'm glad scrutiny recognised it. Councillor Hussain mentioned a priority on climate change, and again, climate change, carbon emission and air quality are things what major projects such as Cooper Bridge will have. The topicality, Mr Mayor, is not only that we were delayed coming today, it's that WICA have revealed their funding options for the future. And we've seen a lot of major schemes in Kirklees, what they call paused. If Shady was here, Mr Mayor, he would be able to tell you that the roof of Heckmond White Baths was taken off in about 1969 for repairs and paused. Never got put back on, so I think we have to bear in mind sometimes what the wise words of David Sheard. But looking at the pausing, the report, which is going to WICA next week, says that there is a near £6 million shortfall in Cooper Bridge. So we have to ask, what's the opportunity for actually delivering that on what we're talking about? You know, it's actually had nearly £3 million spent. And again, the report from Scrutiny talks about the fact that the public in consultation weren't given full information about all the 30 options that, again, Scrutiny highlighted. The options are whittled down by officers, not by members. So we need a reflection on that and to see whether Cooper Bridge will actually deliver, because it has no bus priority measures. So in terms of climate change, how are we going to get people doing the modal shift that we want to see when there are no bus priority measures? There's a question about fairness as well in these schemes, Mr Mayor, that if the funding for schemes is allocated geographically, the majority of the land take at the Cooper Bridge scheme is in Calderdale. So is it fair, if that's the opportunity, that Kirklees may be getting schemes paused because of a project where the majority of the land is in Calderdale? It seems to be rather iniquitous, does that, Mr Mayor? So I would hope colleagues would reflect, and I would hope that the leader seems to be getting vexed about something. You're not getting tweets again, are you, mate? I would hope, Mr Mayor, that the Cabinet would update the scrutiny panel, as we've talked about pre-decision, but also the residents of the Bradley area. Oak Road
Councillor Bolt, is he about scrutiny or anything?
Yes, it's referred to in this. The Cooper Bridge report is in here, Mr Mayor. I'm sure you've read it.
Thank you.
I hope that the Cabinet will bring back, as it says in here, pre-scrutiny, pre-decision scrutiny, so that the residents of Oak Road, Brooklands and Allendale will know that the impact of the scheme, which was made after it went to Cabinet, has on them. And I'll stop with 37 seconds, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Pandor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, thank you, Liz, for that excellent report. And thank you to all the scrutiny members, Councillor Marchington, Councillor Ramsey, Councillor Hussain, Councillor John Taylor, who's not here today, and Councillor Richard Smith for the hard work that they put in scrutiny. Mr Mayor, the way I look at scrutiny is very critical in terms of the holding the executive account, part of the policy development work that you do, external scrutiny, which Martin quite eloquently put forward, but there's also health scrutiny, which has actually a massive impact on the health inequalities. And we can't forget the great work that our scrutineers have done around health, and there's a lot more to do around that. And making sure that the council manages its performance and we get value for money for our residents. Many of you will probably remember it's been 22 years since the Act was passed to develop scrutiny committees, and it was a bit of an unknown. But I think this council, across all administrations, has actually developed scrutiny in a way that acts then politically, acts impartially, and in the best interest of the council. And I think that's because of the organisational culture that we've developed around scrutiny. The past Scrutiny Management Committee chairs have all upheld that, and I'm really proud that you've actually carried that work on. And it's really important that we actually move forward with that, because there are many, many challenges that we are facing, and I'll come on to that later on in my presentation. But moving forward, we have to look at how whatever we do in the future impacts on public services, because that is what we are here for, making sure that the public get the services that we deserve. And just to touch on finally, Mr Mayor, the West Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority. When the Leeds City region was formed, Robert Light was the chair, you probably remember that. And Robert actually was the one who actually argued the case for scrutiny to be put in to the work of the Leeds City region, because there was no framework around that. And I think that work needs to be acknowledged, because that work then moved forward, and then when we created the Combined Authority and then the Mayoral Combined Authority, we actually took that work forward. I feel it's still in its infancy. There's a lot of work that we need to do around that, in terms of making sure that it actually does deliver for everybody in West Yorkshire and everybody in Kirklees. So thank you, Mr Mayor, and once again, thank you, Liz, and your team for the excellent work you do, and I'm sure it's all appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ponder. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be brief, I promise. Add my thanks to the Chair and the Speakers, to the members of panels and the co-optees. Really good to get a flavour that scrutiny now is part of the warp and weft that our staff are practising as they're working, and that's a really good thing to have got a flavour of tonight. And thanks for reporting back on that. Just to pick up on something that the leader mentioned there, the challenges going forward. During COVID, scrutiny was a vital part of that process and of the Outbreak Control Board. Now, we have some very difficult choices to make going forward. They're going to have to be made at pace, and I just wonder, going forward, do you have an idea of what that might look like, so that we can keep that in view, in scrutiny's view, so that we're making good decisions, robust decisions, that are not going to trip us up further down the line, or to the best of our knowledge and ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Smage, Liz, I'd like to thank you for all the work you do, and it is tireless work. I'm not many will know, when I first ever become a councillor, I was put on scrutiny, and Liz was a good mentor for me, so I'd just like to say that. I'd like to thank all the chairs that you've had throughout this period in the report. They've done an exceptional job, and I like the fact that you've acknowledged the co-optees, because they are treasures that you know they're so hard to find. I think scrutiny, to me, the work you do is invaluable. You have a critical eye on what we're doing, and you see things sometimes from a different angle to what we do. And it's for the greater good of Kirklees what scrutiny does. But I just want to pick up, I know people have already mentioned about health and children. I'd want to pick up on some of the things that Councillor Smith actually said. And I was worried about the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, about another tier of democracy being put on and people being further distanced. And I think it's lovely that scrutiny are part of it. And what you said, I would like to see more of that being brought to council so we can see it. We know that the West Yorkshire Mayor will be coming. However, just that is small insight. I think it's important that members see that. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for the work you've done. And on the loneliness, I think everybody should take that, because particularly now we were in crisis, and I think taking away the loneliness and things that scrutiny are doing, I will be in touch. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'd like to start by agreeing with Councillor Bolt, actually. Specifically, I want to agree with his comment that this cabinet isn't going anywhere. I completely agree. Looking at current polling, I don't think we'll be kicked out anytime soon either. No, I really want to thank members of Scrutiny. You asked for it, Martin. I just want to thank members of Scrutiny for everything that they do, everyone who's on it. Particularly, though, I want to thank the chair of the Scrutiny panel that I report to, Councillor Hussain, who chairs it fantastically, particularly given it's just your first year doing it. But I also want to particularly thank Councillor Smage, who I think is an exceptional member of this council in terms of what she contributes through leading our efforts through Scrutiny. I think she does an exceptional work. I think in Kirklees, when you look at our scrutiny arrangements, particularly if you compare it to some other authorities, we actually have really strong scrutiny arrangements and a really strong culture, and I think it makes a real contribution to the way that we work as a council and the way we work. Even if we do have some theatrics at these meetings, the way we work together a bit more at those meetings. So thank you very much, everyone in all parties, for the contribution that you make to scrutiny, and I'm sure you'll continue to do so.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo the thanks as well that's been expressed already, certainly to all the committees and panels and to Councillor Smage. I think we've got a great example through scrutiny of cross-party working. My experience of the panels I've sat in, children's scrutiny, and even Wicker in terms of corporate, certainly I've never experienced any political wranglings, and always a sense of looking at what's in front of you and trying to have a constructive discussion. And as a portfolio holder, I'm certainly seeing corporate scrutiny really starting to develop in terms of pre-decision. And I absolutely agree, Councillor Smage, on the importance of pre-decision. It is something I think we're still learning, and we'll continue to learn going forward and improve. But absolutely with you on that one. And the other thing I would say, certainly co-optees, a fantastic resource. The more we can do around co-optees to have that external voice, we all need it, because sometimes we're in that little bit of a bubble. And certainly what I've seen on corporate, they absolutely bring a different dimension. And finally, because Councillor Marchand got cut off in his prime as such, we're going through children's scrutiny, that was awful the way it was. No, but seriously, again, I know, it's just, what can I say? But I do have an absolute soft spot, because I sat on a committee, and I'm really glad to see the work that continues in that engagement, in getting out from the town hall and getting out from Civic 3 and actually being there with the groups that actually provide those services. And I think that's something that we need to look at right across scrutiny and how we're operating. It's not feasible in some areas, obviously, but it's a great example. And certainly I was listening intently and enjoying it. And my apologies, for the mayor. I'm sure he didn't want to do that here halfway through, but thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Mothers.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to thank all the scrutiny committees that we have. They have been invaluable. I know when I first started as a councillor that I used to be on scrutiny, and scrutiny is good. It says something about the organisation. We are not scared to hold ourselves to be accountable for the decisions we make. So I'd like to thank, in particular, the pre-decision making work, how we worked in relation to the waste strategy, how useful that cross-party input was, so that when it came to making a decision, it went through because everyone was on board. In my area of work, we try and bring as much of the work we're developing to yourselves. So, for example, I can mention that we came to talk about winter maintenance programme. We talked about our playable spaces. We talk about highways as well. And I wish to God that I could take it to Mars to repair all the roads and then simply bring them down, flat pack and put them out so there'd be no disruption. But I'm afraid the only way we're going to move forward is to actually do the work on site, so we can pick up any of the issues. And Councillor Bolt, I know you're shaking your head. There is no way around it. It's the only way to improve the roads. And we have precious little resources, and we want to make sure, we want to make sure that...
Okay, yeah.
The Cabinet member has clearly misunderstood what I said. Therefore, as a point of explanation, I'm entitled to correct her. I mentioned to the fact that there were 30 options. How many of those didn't involve digging up Cooper Bridge? We don't know because they were kept from us, but certainly some of the initial consultation ones would not have had the impact on Cooper Bridge. Therefore, don't be so supercilious and say that it's the only option.
Councillor Bolt, thank you for that.
Councillor Bolt,
Councillor
I am not being supercilious. All I'm saying is there will be disruption. Any roadworks that are up for improvement requires the delays that happen, and it puts us squarely in view of actually safeguarding for the future. So if we're going to have developments, if our roads need work, highways need to be out there, and there will be some disruption. And that aside, it's scrutiny I wanted to thank, and I do thank scrutiny for allowing us to sit back and re-look at what we're doing and making sure all of the options that we've appraised are in public view before we come to make a decision. So thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to thank everyone for their kind words. I know how difficult it can be to scrutinise something, but I just want to remind panel members, moving forward, I would appreciate if scrutiny could work in a very constructive way and be a critical friend, and I think my colleague Councillor Smage has already mentioned that, and I hope moving forward we can work cooperatively. I know you're very passionate, Martin. But yes, I just wanted to highlight that, and I also want to say a special thank you actually to my right-hand woman, Jodie, who's the Officer for Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny Committee. She does an absolute fantastic job, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank her personally. Thank you.
Councillor Marchington.
Well, I didn't realise we were getting two goes, but I will. Yeah, I think it's really important to know that the degree of challenge that goes on, and I think what we should as a council is appreciate a close agreement. But things are not always going as they ought to be doing, and actually being able to ask difficult questions openly and honestly is the way to go. And I think the way that's done in scrutiny, but it's still there. There's still so we talked about it's still on an improvement journey, and things are not they're getting better, but it's not quite where we want to be, and that's the same in a lot of areas of the council. So we must be open to that challenge and expect it. And it's great to receive the thanks, but occasionally it's those persistent questions which are difficult that people don't necessarily want to answer, which are the ones that really unpicking what's going on, and we must remember that, and that's the way we drive improvement. The things that are going, putting the things that are going wrong right is the way that we drive improvement. Thank you.
Councillor Smage, right to reply?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor. Thank you. Can I thank everybody for all of your kind comments? Thank you very much. Co-op teas, yes, absolutely essential. We had many co-op teas that actually did longer than their usual number of years during the pandemic, so that we had continuity of co-op teas. And then when we've had a recruitment for new co-op teas, and we had quite a good, we had a really good response this time. Yes, I agree. We couldn't do it without the co-op teas. I think all I'll say on the call-in is that Cabinet accepted all the recommendations. Okay. I think scrutiny is a way of learning about the organisation. For councillors who are not involved, it is a way of learning about the organisation and finding an area that you can that interests you, that you can specialise in, for want of a better word. And I think scrutiny is really good for that. Going forward, we are going to need to have those constructive discussions that have been mentioned, and work programmes need to have room for both pre-decision and, as I said, cabinet decisions already taken. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to close the meeting for a break now, and then we can...
For good.
Yeah, sorry, the report just for information only as well, so we can have a break now and then start with item 8. We're now on item 9, written question to the leader, cabinet members, chairs of committees and nominated spokesperson. A written schedule of submitted questions has been circulated. I will now invite members to ask their questions in turn. The appropriate member will respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted. Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For some time, a significant nuisance was being caused to a number of residents of Denbydale Ward by virtue of works being carried on unlawfully at a site off Rogate and Heater Lane at Upper Cumberworth. Following representations by myself and residents, the council officers took action to prosecute the perpetrators. I understand that the council's team included officers from legal, planning and environmental who dealt with noise nuisance, along with counsel from King's Chambers, and I've written to the team to thank them for a job well done. This was a case we've been battling for 3 years, and the council took action through the court prosecution process for the failure to comply with 2 enforcement notices, one for the storage of stone and the other in relation to the processing of stone at a site in the Greenbelt. The council officers and the legal team had a number of technical arguments they had to overcome at several court hearings, but ultimately were entirely successful, and then the defendants were found guilty on both counts by a district judge. I understand that including paying the council's costs of £18,000 and court fine, the total financial penalty to the defendants is £38,420. And this doesn't include their own legal costs, which will have no doubt been significant. Does the leader agree with me that action such as this on the part of the council sends a strong message that you can't come to Kirklees, breach planning control and an enforcement notice and expect to get away with it? And would the leader like to join with me in thanking the team for their endeavours in this regard and a job very well done?
Councillor Panda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Watson, for that question. And I would like to share your comments regarding the excellent work our staff has done. What I'll do is ask Councillor Graham Turner, who's...
Can we have one conversation at a time, please?
Regarding planning.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Turner, can you please respond?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Councillor Watson, thank you for the question. As you know, I know this case very well, as I was involved in it prior to my leaving the Denbydale Ward. I know how much time and effort it has taken to resolve, and I can't thank officers enough for the time and effort they are putting to reaching what is now a very satisfactory conclusion. Can I be clear that I absolutely welcome investment in the creation of jobs and seeing local businesses thrive, which help grow our economy and create wealth and jobs in Kirklees. However, this very successful prosecution sends out a very clear message. You can't just ignore planning and enforcement notices in Kirklees. We are not a soft touch. As a council, we are committed to upholding planning rules and holding those that choose to flout and break rules to account. I really do hope that this case reassures our communities that where harm is caused by a breach of planning control, appropriate action will be taken. And I want to emphasise this should serve as a warning to others who think they can get away with ignoring the rules. We will pursue you, no matter how long it takes or how difficult they make it for us, and we will use the full weight of the law to secure a conviction and seek the maximum penalty for such infringements.
Councillor Watson, do you have a supplementary? No. Okay, thank you for that. Question 2, Councillor Watson to the Cabinet Member, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Defining one night of respite care as being the provision of one overnight stay to an individual child by the facility at Orchard View, what was the maximum number of nights of respite care that could have been provided to carers in Kirklees during the period 1st of January 2020 to the 31st of December 2020? How many nights of respite care were actually provided during this period? What was the maximum number of nights of respite care that could have been provided to carers in Kirklees during the period 1st of January 2021 to the 31st of January 2021? And how many nights of respite care were provided during this period? What was the maximum number of nights of respite care that could have been provided to carers in Kirklees during the period 1st of January 2022 to the 1st of November 2022? And how many nights of respite care have been provided during this period?
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Watson, for your question. I am answering this on behalf of Councillor Viv Kendrick, as she's not here today. I mean, your detailed question has meant a detailed answer, I'm afraid, so it's quite long. And I'll try not to repeat what you've already said, but in order to let everybody else understands the response, then I do have to repeat
Councillor
your question.
Pinnock, can we have one conversation, please? Thank you.
In answer to the first question of how many nights of respite care were there could have been provided throughout 2020, based on supporting a maximum of 4 children together at any one time for short breaks at Orchard View, there is a capacity to provide up to 1,452 bed nights per year. However, due to restriction and infection control advice during 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, the actual capacity that year was 628 during April to October. And how many nights of respite care were actually provided during that time? There were 484 overnight short breaks and 350 nights of care and support to children with emotional and behavioural difficulties. So that was a total of, throughout the whole year, of 834. During 2021, the maximum number of bed spaces, again, was 1,452. And the actual number of bed spaces provided was 489 overnight short breaks and 430 nights of care and support to children with emotional and behavioural difficulties. The total number of nights provided was 919. So for this year to date, or to the 1st of November, the maximum number of bed nights available is 1,393. And so far, the home has provided 275 overnight short breaks and 415 nights of care and support to children with emotional and behavioural difficulties, bringing the total for the year to date to 690. I have to say that we are fully committed to support our children and families with additional needs and recognise that providing much needed breaks and respite is absolutely essential for their well-being and their families. We provide this in several ways to suit families' needs, including direct payments, commissioning individual packages of support, and providing structured activities after school on weekends or in school holidays. And for a relatively small number of our families, we also offer the overnight respite provision at Orchard View. Throughout the period of Orchard View, having a limited overnight respite offer as a result of the needs of some specific children, there has been close contact with families who have been able to access other aspects of our respite offer. This has included providing individual packages of care for families, sometimes with third-party trusted organisations, staff providing outreach in the community to offer support, and increasing the provision of our young persons activity team to support children and young people. And we have also seen demand for our overnight respite offer reduce. Over the past 3 years, this is in part due to needs changing and in part due to children and young people reaching 18 and accessing adult respite. Additionally, we have seen a reduction in demand following the introduction of more flexible, individualised approaches that were introduced during the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we had 50 families accessing overnight respite, and currently we only have 15 registered with Orchard View. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, supplementary question? No, thank you. Question 3, Councillor Watson to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the 27th of February 2022, I wrote a very detailed letter comprising over 30 pages to the leader in relation to highways issues in Denbigh Ward. The letter dealt with a significant number of issues that are of concern to residents throughout the ward, including, by way of example, Stringer House Lane at Emley, Park Lane, Upper Cumberworth, Heater Lane and Rowgate at Upper Cumberworth, Busker Lane in Skelmanthorpe and Garden Terrace in Denbigh. The letter was not simply a whinge, but included a number of positive suggestions as to how the council might improve services in this regard. Now, I would like to be able to feed back the response to that letter to the residents of Denbigh Ward. Is there going to be a response from the leader? And if so, how long will we have to wait for a reply?
Councillor Pando.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Watson, for that question. You did write to me, and the letter was sent by email, and I did respond back to you, and I copied Councillor Naheed Mather, who's the Cabinet Portfolio holder, and she will now explain to you exactly what has happened in response to the important issues you raised with me at that moment in time. So, Councillor Naheed Mather, can you please respond?
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. So, Councillor Watson, I do acknowledge your letter. You do have a tendency to write very lengthy letters and lengthy questions, 30 pages to be exact. You mentioned 7 lists, a long list of 7 roads here. So I want to say that, yes, I acknowledge the letter. The issues raised were discussed internally, and you will get a response by the end of this month because it takes time. It is noted that your letter does contain a significant number of issues which require extended investigation, as you can imagine. And in the meantime, Highways has continued to deliver for the district and for Denbigh. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor. This was February when I wrote, and we're still waiting for a response. This causes me grave concern that this hasn't been taken seriously. So my question to follow on would be, does Denbigh Ward matter? And if so, what can we expect to see happen over the coming months that will show to the people of Denbigh that it matters?
Councillor Mathers.
Councillor Watson, of course Denbigh matters. That's where all the rich folk live. And I like to drive through it. And to tell you, we've taken it seriously, and all 3 of the Denbigh ward councillors have locality-based unclassified roads programme in phase 1, which was completed. These are Coal Pit Lane, Car Hill Road and Durndyke Lane. The current allocation for Denbigh Ward is in phase 2 happens to be 577,000. Now, can you tell me, does that not say how much Denbigh matters in our district?
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Question 4, question from Councillor Bamford to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Pando.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following on from the question by Councillor Watson about the letter he wrote to you regarding highways issues in Denbigh Ward, one of the issues he raised and made suggestions for improvement about was the bend on Busker Lane, just past the windmill pub heading out of Skelmanthorpe, where there have been numerous accidents and pedestrians are extremely vulnerable. There has just been another incident to which the emergency services attended, and I have had reports of some residents of the ward that they came very close to being struck by the lorry involved. There is actually an update to that. Someone had to jump over the wall and has suffered severe spinal injuries. This is a location through which many school children walk each day. Could the Leader please explain why Councillor Watson's suggestions for improvements are being ignored and nothing is being done to reduce the risk to pedestrians at this location?
Councillor Pando.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bamford, regarding the letter Councillor Watson wrote to me back in February 2022. Like I explained, I responded back to Councillor Watson, and I copied my Cabinet member in Councillor Naheed Mather, who will now provide you with a fuller response. Councillor Naheed Mather.
Councillor Mathers.
Thank you. Councillor Bamford, I'm sorry to learn. I did know before the question of the recent incident at Busker Lane. I do know, follow things quite carefully, and I understand it's being investigated by the police to determine the cause. And we also, I'd like to personally wish a speedy full recovery for the resident involved. You will be pleased to know that our highway safety team has identified funding from within the 22-23 capital plan programme to implement improvements along Busker Lane in 23-24. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary? No. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Question 5, Councillor Cooper to the leader.
Where will the decision be taken to decide if we're to pursue an investment zone in Kirklees? Should it be offered by the government?
Councillor Pandor.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Firstly, Mr Mayor, it's just an expression of interest that we submitted, and I really genuinely hope that we, along with the other West Yorkshire Combined Authorities, are successful, because that is much needed investment that we will get into this council. My Cabinet Member, Councillor Graham Turner, has been working on this in great detail, and I will now pass on to Councillor Graham Turner.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Councillor Cooper, thanks for the question. Ultimately, I believe it's likely that decision will be for Cabinet, as an investment zone confers different planning and financial arrangements than other sites in the borough. Given the departure from the existing policy and the financial benefits that could accrue to landowners and businesses, there is likely to be a need for Cabinet to agree to adopt investment zone status for defined sites, but we are yet to see the detail, so I'm afraid at this moment in time I cannot give you the definitive answer.
Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary?
Given that investment zones are a departure from policies that we have in the local plan, given that we may be asked to set aside policies which have been agreed democratically by us all here in full council, is it right that the Cabinet should be the people who are deciding whether we take on investment zones? Shouldn't it be the full council that decides whether we're going to take on investment zones or not?
Councillor Turner. Thank you. Can I remind members to press their buttons as well, please? Question 7, Councillor Cooper to the Cabinet Member, Councillor Davies.
Now the Blacker Road element of 6. Now the Blacker Road element of the A629 widening proposals have been cancelled, what will the council tell residents who are due to lose homes and gardens and parts of their gardens?
Councillor Simpson. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you. Martin, I'm going to use a little comment you made earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Firth.
Now the Blacker Road element, and your question. The Blacker Road element is paused, Councillor Cooper, not cancelled. And we mentioned the Sheedism earlier on about the Ekman White baths. It's been a long time, it's been paused a very long time. The council has engaged with the affected residents and businesses throughout the development of the scheme and will continue to do so on an individual basis as appropriate. We will engage with landowners on a case-by-case basis to agree next steps forward.
Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Paused. Here's the Oxford English Dictionary. And to pause is to stop briefly, then recommence. So is the pause 1 day? Is it 2 days? Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? And is it actually fair to the people whose lives are on hold, the people who've been, who could potentially lose their homes, the people who could lose their gardens, to keep them in limbo all this time? Is the council doing the right thing by those people by just saying we're leaving this hanging in the air? Aren't we letting those people down? Shouldn't we be telling those people exactly what's going to happen to them, about their future in the places that they live?
Councillor Firth.
The council are aware of the uncertainty resulting from the inflation review undertaken by WICA, or the Mayoral Authority, and will work closely with the Mayor Brabin and her colleagues to ensure commitments for the rest of the transport programme. We will continue to work with those individuals that you mentioned going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Question 7 from Councillor Cooper to Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Davies.
What support from Kirklees or others will be offered to voluntary and community organisations opening their buildings for use as warm spaces to the community?
Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. And thanks for the question, and it's very pertinent. I think many of you noticed at around about 1 o'clock today, we actually launched our Warm Spaces initiative. We will be using our network of 24 libraries across Kirklees as hubs. They will be ongoing. It's, you know, we're in the middle of an extremely difficult situation, but one thing we've said as an administration, that we will be ensuring our libraries continue to provide the services that they've been doing and the amazing work they've done throughout COVID and in recent times going forward. So these libraries will work with community groups and create a network in which warm spaces will not just become available for people to be aware of where to go and how to access those warm spaces. And this is part of the plan that we talked about a little time ago in September, and the cost of living plan, where we're looking at 3 phases. Firstly, the emergency response, which is obviously the critical support that we're giving now in the crisis. Resilience, building our resilience within communities, and then the ongoing prevention, which is all about the investments that we are making as a council in order to make sure that we meet some of the medium and long-term challenges. As councillors, I think we've discussed before, we all have a role to play in this, and in particular in helping coordinate and communicate the support delivery. So certainly I see councillors at the heart of this, working very closely with libraries in their areas in order to provide intelligence of where there is support and to help connect those areas of support within their particular wards. We've focused on building on what's available now. We've not tried to reinvent something, and libraries clearly have provided a very similar role for some time. So we're building on top of something that's there, and we're finding, and I've discovered this in my own ward, it's amazing that once you start working that way, that you uncover areas of support that you didn't know existed before. The warm spaces are not just about shipping people into somewhere to keep warm. It's very much about creating that community space, providing other resources where we can, whether that's in some cases, some groups providing free lunches or a reduced price for lunches, certainly access to services and a safe space for people to talk. We're mapping our libraries. There's a national site, which is www.warmwelcome.uk. Our libraries will be mapped on there, along with the community groups that we also identify. So there will be an easy access point for people to see across Kirklees where they can go. That will include opening hours. It'll also include detail on some of the facilities available. Certainly within libraries, again, I will emphasise, and I'll keep emphasising the great job they do, but we know that it's not just a warm welcome. There's free Wi-Fi, there's free access to computers, free books, free events, various activities, and certainly signposting to support. So phase 2 of what we're doing, so today we've launched that. Phase 2 is absolutely about enhancing and taking forward the momentum, that connection with community groups and organisations, and making sure that we are able to support those as well. So next week at Cabinet, you will see in Cabinet papers, we're discussing the funding that's been made available from Councillor Brabin's cost of living emergency fund, if I can get my words out. That will help provide support to community groups. We're also doing some match funding to that out of our welfare budgets. So certainly that detail will become much clearer next week. There have already been discussions with TSL, the third sector leaders, around support and funds that they would like to see in terms of warm spaces. So in summary, we've launched the initiative. Our libraries are up there and running. The libraries teams are absolutely geared up to support this initiative. We're already making connections with other groups to provide the warm spaces, and next week we will certainly have clarity around the funding that we as Cabinet will sign off and then be able to process and progress with community groups.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary?
The question was about voluntary and community organisations. I heard libraries about 30 times, I think, which aren't voluntary and community organisations. What you did say, well, most of them are. But what you did say was that we're going to find out next week, basically, where the money is going to come from, and that some money is going to come from Wicker, and that we're going to put some money to that. That's what we want to know, because there are voluntary and community organisations which are planning on opening up their halls to help people to be places when people are in cold weather. But at the moment, we don't know what support they're going to get from the council or from Wicker. We hear that it's coming, but we don't know what that support is. Is that a fair interpretation of what you've said, apart from the library stuff?
Councillor Davis.
I'm very disappointed. You're so dismissive about our libraries. I'm sorry. Somebody to me being very dismissive. It's part of the whole approach. The whole approach is using the libraries as central hubs. We already provide support as a council to community groups and community organisations. We already work through the third sector. We provide through our welfare funds significant funding to community groups across Kirklees and have a very close relationship with TSL and One Community. It's true to say that the additional funding that's coming through from Wicker, we will be able to identify that more clearly in terms of its use next week in Cabinet. And it's true to say that then we will move forward with that. But it's absolutely not the case that we don't support those groups now. And in fact, I think Kirklees has got a proud record, certainly way before myself as a portfolio holder, of working very closely with the voluntary sector. So yes, there will be some additional news next week. No, I don't believe it is the situation where nothing is happening now. In fact, far from it.
I just want to remind members we've only got 3 minutes left on this item. Would you like to extend the item? Can we go to a vote? Yeah. Can we vote on that? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for that. Yeah, fine. Question 8, Councillor Hall, to Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Mothers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I ask my question, I wonder if you'd accept an apology from me. I should have proffered the apologies from Councillor Stephen tonight, and I neglected to do so. So could you amend the record, please, for that? The question is to Councillor Mather. How long should the public have to wait for the promised replacement of play equipment?
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I'm very proud of our Playable Spaces strategy, which has been successfully delivering for some time now. In the current phase operating since July last year, we have delivered or are mid-construction on 16 sites. A further 11 are in procurement, and following on close behind are 30 more in various stages of design and consultation. It is more important than ever that in the current climate that we continue to ensure that every child and young person has the best start in life. The experience of positive and creative play is essential in enabling our communities to achieve these outcomes. However, children and young people play in many ways and at many different times and places. For these reasons, the strategy does not come with pre-packaged plan or assumptions, but works with yourselves, councillors and communities to prioritise the sites and develop the design with them. This does take time, and sometimes the team has to go through the design process more than once, but it ensures that we stay true to our goals and deliver for our communities. We have, in this time, also faced some of the same global issues we have seen in the news each day, and I'm sure all councillors will join me in commending the commitment and passion of our teams and the communities to continue to deliver despite this. Thank you.
Councillor Hall, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your response, Councillor Mather. It is indeed, the nugget of this is about the playable spaces strategy. And I've looked back and I've still got records of emails from August 2017, when this had been going some time. We're still awaited a single improvement to any playable area in my ward. We can't even get a park refurbished, even though we've promised the ward money in its entirety to do it. How much longer, please, could you tell us before we actually get a spade in the ground on my ward? Or is it because we're not full of rich people? Would she agree that this whole programme has effectively stalled?
Councillor Mothers.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. But I too can say with some truth that I love Liversidge and Gummersall too. So you're not forgotten. You're not forgotten. You're not forgotten. And as far as I know, councillors regularly receive reports from the team in relation to precisely where we are according to each ward. And I think in yours, it's been delayed because the main concerns are around drainage and teen provision. I think you're talking about the Gummersall, Robertstown Creation Ground, aren't you? And the design went out to public consultation between May and June of this year. Responses were collated and analysed in July 22, and the concerns came up with drainage and teen provision. The landscape architects have been working with our drainage team to try and design out the drainage issues as fast as we can. This has taken some time, unfortunately. The design for tender is also ready, and then we'll move to creating the tender pack. It is unfortunate that occasionally we find other issues other than what you go out to do, which is to make our environment pleasant and to put in place playable spaces which are future-proofed. So I'm sorry it's taken some time, but there are real issues we're trying to work with. Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Councillor Mother.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question 9. Has an assessment been undertaken on the cost of decarbonising Kirklees' owned public buildings across the area?
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I hope you don't mind myself responding. Councillor Munro, thank you very much for your question. Kirklees Council has steadily delivered an ambitious programme of activity which contributes to addressing climate emissions and vulnerability to climate change. This work also includes a detailed evidence base for decarbonising Kirklees in both the Net Zero Assessment and the Climate Change Action Plan. In June of this year, officers from the Energy and Climate Change team applied for funding via SALIX as part of the Low Carbon Skills Fund to produce heat decarbonisation plans, which will give the Council a greater understanding of the costs of decarbonisation in our own estate. A partner has now been appointed to undertake the HDP work for a range of Kirklees' corporate buildings, schools and town halls across Kirklees. This work will help Kirklees understand the true costs of decarbonising council buildings and will further provide a plan to decarbonise our corporate estate to achieve our net zero target. This is a long-term programme as it is complex, and we need to make sure we get it right and target our largest energy-intensive buildings first. The learnings from this, however, will contribute to and inform future prioritised delivery and our decarbonisation projects.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Munro, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Just wanted to ask, so you said it's going to take a long time, so I just wondered if you could provide a time frame, or is it going to be done before 2038, or for example? Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
I hope it'll be done before 2038. The work's ongoing with the partner at the moment in time, so I don't want to make something up for you that when I don't know what the facts are. I wouldn't want to do that. So I can't give you a solid timescale now, but I can only reiterate our commitment to making sure that we do it as effectively and efficiently as we can in making sure that we reach our ambitious climate targets.
Thank you. Question 10 from Councillor Paul Davis to Cabinet Member for Culture, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. As the plans for the cultural heart are being shared more widely, can you please share the plans for the collections currently housed and displayed at the Tolson Museum?
Thank you, Councillor Davis, for your question. The Museum and Galleries team have undertaken initial planning for the major process of developing the content of the museum and art gallery in the cultural heart. In due course, the project will deliver a comprehensive exhibition, interpretation and design scheme for the new museum and gallery. Completion of the scheme will require the eventual transfer of collections from the stores and existing displays at Tolson Museum. Until this time, these collections will continue to be housed and displayed at Tolson Museum in accordance with the Council's commitment to continue to provide a museum about Huddersfield for our communities to enjoy until such a time that the Cultural Heart Development Project is complete. The only exception to this would be movement of collections to facilitate repair and maintenance works to the Tolson building itself. All collections management during this process will be undertaken in line with the Arts Council England Museum accreditation, as the Museums and Galleries Service are an accredited organisation.
Thank you for that. Councillor Davis, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. As you'll be aware, the building that Tolson's housed in was gifted to the Huddersfield Corporation by the Tolson family as part of the Ravensnell estate. It's over 100 years old. So and it was gifted with the covenant that that building, and as a museum, will stay as part of an obligation to be used for the education, cultural development of the people of Huddersfield. So once the Cultural Heart and the new museum is open, what is the ongoing plan for the collections in the Tolson Museum, please?
Councillor Simpson.
So you're right, the covenant relates to the building having a continuing educational element towards it, and the plan for the Tolson at the moment isn't something that we've got set in stone. It's something that we still need to develop, and we want to do that with the community to make sure that we've got the best possible solution to make sure that it's sustainable, and that's something that we're very happy to work with ward councillors on as well as the community. That isn't something that's short term. Obviously, we've still got to deliver the Cultural Heart and the new museum and gallery before that transfer can take place, and then we can begin on what will be the new start for Tolson. So I'm afraid that isn't something that I can give a short term answer to, but it's certainly something that we want to work with you on.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Question 11, Councillor Munro to Cabinet Member for Culture, Councillor Simpson.
Okay, question 11. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the Council doing to encourage homeowners to apply for government funding to help with support for them to install alternative sustainable energy systems in their homes to reduce their reliance on mainstream energy suppliers going forward? Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Munro, for your question again. The Kirklees Climate Change Action Plan, which will be going to Cabinet next week, contains several measures to combat climate change, including measures to improve residents' homes, provide alternative sources of energy, and investing in renewables and zero-carbon technology. We have a plan to comprehensively communicate the strategy to accompany the launch of the action plan after it's agreed by Cabinet next week, and then it will be brought as well so that all councillors can discuss it to Council on the 7th of December. This comms plan will promote ways in which people can help themselves, including gaining access to grants and funding opportunities. I've asked officers in the Energy and Climate Change team to update the Kirklees Climate Emergency website with links to sources of local, regional and government funding or help alongside the comms we will be doing for the Climate Change Action Plan, which will be made live soon.
Councillor Munro, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
How is the Council meeting the costs of inflation?
Councillor Davis.
And thanks for this question. Clearly something which is extremely important and critical at the moment. Certainly members have all been briefed on the immediate steps that we're taking to tackle this extraordinary rise in costs that we're seeing during this financial year. And this includes recruitment freezes, and the recruitment freeze on all but essential posts, looking at our assets, our buildings, and how we can rationalise those to reduce our energy costs, new processes for scrutinising all new spending, and most certainly a freeze on agency staff, again, for all but the most essential posts. And those are just some of the actions that we're taking at this present time. This is on top of the work we've already been doing during the year. And we've been, as you know, reviewing our capital programme. We talked a little bit earlier on about pausing programmes, and clearly that's part of what we've been looking at as a Cabinet and as a senior management team for some time and will be going forward. Certainly, the word efficiencies will come up time and time again in our discussions. That's what is going on at this moment in terms of the work, the transformation work that our executive team are taking through. We're doing everything we can in terms of looking at what can be done within the processes and our approaches in the services to continue to provide those within the new financial envelope that we face. But we're under no illusion, and I don't think anybody in this chamber is under any illusion, the situation is extremely serious. And our future looks grim. Not just our future, the country's future, and of course, our other colleagues in other local authorities. We are facing 12 million extra in energy costs this year, 10 million in other pay and inflationary pressures. And then you add to that a further 11 million of demand pressures and other costs, many of those actually linked to the economic situation that we face. The budget gap next year is set to rise significantly unless we can get, and I'll emphasise this time and time again in this chamber, a decent, but above all, fair settlement from government. There is no other way of putting it. That has to happen, not just for us, but right across local authorities. And certainly the LGA have been very clear about that as well. So the government's autumn statement and local government statement will shape the future more than anything we talk about or anything that happens in this chamber. But what's worth remembering is this local authority is much better placed than many others for this economic shock. We have been prudent over the years. We've kept healthy reserves just for this situation. Though it's worth mentioning that, and I'm sure many of you remember discussions only 12 months ago, where as an administration, we were being told by some opposition members we should be spending those reserves. And that actually we were quite disgraceful because we weren't spending those. If we had followed that advice, we would be in a much more difficult situation now. And actually, even in a situation where if you want to use the word bankrupt, we could have been close to that position. So as we look ahead, the challenges are going to intensify. Our priority has to be frontline services, because that's where our residents will rely more than ever in this current cost of living crisis. But we're also going to maintain our vision for Kirklees, supporting economic growth in the long term, making sure everyone can fulfil their potential and that residents can lead happy, healthy lives in a safe and thriving communities.
Thank you for that. Councillor Munro, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you for that. Question 13 from Councillor Marchington to Cabinet Member for Housing, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Scott, can I ask why so many homes and neighbourhoods vehicles are being parked in the centre of Huddersfield at the moment?
Councillor Scott.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Marchington. It's appreciated because we also equally all have noted there's a high presence of vehicles. So homes and neighbourhoods are carrying out significant refurbishment in Civic 1. Also the work in other town centre buildings which are linked to the Queensgate Market and the Huddersfield Blueprint. Homes and neighbourhoods also carry out emergency repairs, which are required on corporate buildings. So vans are parking closer to locations because they have to carry the stock and the tools. Now, I did a bit more further digging so that we could, I think you've got to have a more comprehensive answer regarding this. And I think that, homes and neighbourhood staff have been asked to try their best to keep out the civic areas, because we don't want to increase all the vans taking up, potential parking spaces for commuters or people from the town centre. Can I just say within the last month there has been quite a high increase in the area. It's because they're working on Civic 1, Civic 3, and the high street florist shops, the high street buildings, Queensgate Market, Kingsgate buildings, and the Huddersfield Town Centre in general. So I do appreciate comments. I've asked directors to be on top of this, and staff are being encouraged to park elsewhere if they can, but it can't always happen. So they're doing the best they can, and I think they should be commended that they're actually carrying out work. So thank you. Councillor Martin, do you have a supplementary question?
Thanks, Cathy, for that. Glad you appreciate the issue. I just ask that we take the impact that many of us have noticed seriously. Try and make sure that because again, it's recognising the impact it has on residents who absolutely need to park in the town centre and not being able to access close access to shops. So just some assurances about we are keeping on top of that as well as we can do, please.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. Your comments are noted. I've also had other comments from other people. I equally share the frustration, so I'll pass it on, and we are monitoring the situation. However, we have to be patient because some of these works are required.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Question 14 from Councillor Armour to Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care, Councillor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. With ongoing concerns about inflation and food, energy and fuel, by which I mean road fuel, prices in particular, I worry about the continuing viability of some of the organisations on which this council relies to provide necessary care for our disabled and many of our elderly residents. Does this council have robust contingency plans in place to ensure continuity of both domiciliary and residential provisions in the care sector should any providers go out of business?
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Armour, yes, we do. We have robust contingency plans in place for when providers must close their business. We're also working with independent provider sector regarding increased costs and issues they are facing to better understand the implications and mitigate risks where we can. Some of our council rates and fees have also been increased in year to try and support providers. Our plans include consultation with service users and families with support from a dedicated team to find new placements in care homes or from brokerage in domiciliary care to ensure the smooth transition of service users. We also work with the staff employed in those services that are closing to try and retain them in the local care market and offer them recruitment support from into care. However, there are still no further details of the £500 million that was announced by government at the start of October that was intended to support social care through this winter. Furthermore, the proposed social care reform does nothing to address the concerns raised about sustainability of the sector. Tory Prime Minister after Tory Prime Minister have consistently failed to find a long-term sustainable solution to protect the most vulnerable in society. The Tories' crashing of the economy certainly has not helped the crisis in adult social care.
Councillor Hammer, have you got a supplementary question?
Yes, I anticipated the political rant, Mr Mayor. Given that we've had such a long time of failure, surely this council has now decided to set up contingency plans apart from the government? Or are you just assuming the government's going to change course and give lots of money? It's a bit of an inconsistent answer, that. Would you like to try for more consistency? Thank you.
Councillor Hammer, I think my message and my answer was very clear and very consistent. We are, despite the government's failing, we have robust contingency plans in place. And that's despite the government's consistent failing, Prime Minister after Prime Minister promising to find a long-term solution when the government had an opportunity. They instilled reforms that does nothing to resolve the issue around long-term funding.
Question 15 from Councillor Armour to Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care, Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Nursing homes are subject to the same cost pressures as care homes, and they have additional problems with recruitment and retention of qualified nursing staff. Again, does this council have suitable contingency plans in place to meet with the sudden closure of one or more nursing homes in the borough?
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Armour, my answer is yes again. Recruitment and retention are issues faced across the whole health and care sector, and we are working hard with partner organisations including the Health and Care Partnership, Integrated Care Board, Locala and the Hospital Trust to ensure we recruit, retain and support nursing staff across the sector. We have robust contingency plans in place, and I won't repeat some of the answers from the previous question because they're very, very similar, these two questions. But I will say the Tories have created the current crisis in the NHS, and the Tories' crashing of the economy, plunging us into a recession, has not helped matters. The NHS England Chief Officer of Finance warned last month that the NHS could face a £7 billion budget shortfall next year. He disclosed that the NHS England will have to cover costs or additional costs of £6 to £7 billion of extra costs over the next year's period from 2023 to 2024 due to the financial crisis and inflation pushing up the cost of supplies. This will inevitably have an impact on staff, on everybody who uses the NHS and throughout the NHS.
Councillor Ahmed, do you have a supplementary question?
Supplementary, but well, where does one start with that? Inflation is an international issue, it's not a national issue. There's a war in Ukraine that's nothing to do with anybody in this country. And my question was not about the NHS. So you're just extrapolating. You're not concentrating. I'm asking if Kirklees is concentrating on the issues that face Kirklees, not the issues that face the international community, nor those that face the nation as a whole, nor the NHS. it's Kirklees I'm asking about. But I'll take that as the answer I was given and take that as a comment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Councillor Khan.
Councillor Armour, I can't not figure out whether you're extremely naive or really, really clever, because nursing comes under health, even though everything nowadays is done in partnership, you know, including our own adult social care, where possible. But it's really interesting that previously in 2010, when we had a global recession, Labour was blamed, but this time not every country crashed their currency overnight like the Tories did, and that has had knock-on effects, and it's going to have more knock-on effects on this council, on the health services, across the board, across all public services.
Question 16, Councillor McGuinn to Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Mather, what are the public toilet provisions in Huddersfield Town Centre?
Councillor Khan's going to respond to this question.
Okay, we know that from feedback from the public, they want toilets when they're out and about. Many businesses recognise this and have responded to this by providing toilet facilities, either on an individual basis or on complexes like Kingsgate. But we also know that there's some people with disability means that they have specific additional needs, and the current provision doesn't meet those needs. We are carrying out an extensive piece of work looking at provision for disabled people and people with additional needs. We've ensured that change in places toilets were incorporated. That's the term that we use for the special toilets that you know, facilitate wider use. And that provision was incorporated in the design of Huddersfield Leisure Centre, and it's been part of the refurbishments of Civic Centre 1 and the design specification for buildings that form the cultural heart offer. It's been included in that. We are incorporating principles of dementia design and age-friendly communities in the town centre plans. And I've just been told at the new bus station there will be these specialised changing places toilets as well. We've also identified other towns across Kirklees where they could benefit from these specialised toilets.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor McGuinn, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, I think Councillor Khan has answered what I was going to ask, but you are working with businesses to provide these facilities. That's what I was concerned about. So you've answered my question, so thank you very much.
So question 17, Councillor McGuinn to Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Councillor Turner.
What was the amount spent on containers brought in to temporarily house traders from the Huddersfield and Dewsbury markets?
Councillor Turner.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Councillor McGuinn, thank you for the question. 53 containers have been purchased for the temporary market in Dewsbury. The total cost was $924,000, and this included the bespoke adaptations required to make them usable as market stalls, e.g. making of openings, installation of secure shutters, all those sort of things, plus painting to the required specifications, and also including delivery costs. They were delivered over a period of 7 months, from September 2021 to April 2022. No containers were purchased from Huddersfield because we don't need any in Huddersfield.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor McGuinn, do you have a supplementary question?
So, is it still the plan to use them in Dewsbury? And overall, do you think it is value for money and the money you spent on those containers?
Councillor Turner.
Mr Mayor, thank you once again. Yes, of course we intend to use them in Dewsbury. Planning permission is underway for the redevelopment of the Dewsbury market. So yes, we do intend to use them in Dewsbury. Work is ongoing. Obviously, due to the current economic crisis, that may take a little bit longer. And are they value for money? Absolutely the value for money. Because we bought them before Trustnomics crashed the economy.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Question 18. Question from Councillor McGuinn to Cabinet Member for Learning, Aspiration and Communities, Councillor Patterson.
Will there be provision to help feed children on free school meals over Christmas?
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Councillor McGuinn, for your question. And yes, because the Tories have crashed the economy, this is going to be needed even more than it was before. But we were prescient in this. I mean, back in October, the Cabinet agreed, as part of our cost of living proposals, that every child that was on free school meals would get a £50 voucher before Christmas, not just to spend on food, but obviously heating and all the other interest rises as a result of the cost of living crisis. We're also, though, worried about those families who are not on free school meals, who are just above the threshold, or even now, quite way above the threshold. So we are looking at ways in which we can perhaps give a bit more support to those families. But schools have been alerted to give out these vouchers before Christmas, well before Christmas, so that families can plan, and also to be on the lookout for families who may not be eligible under the free school meals criteria, but who they know are in need. And we will be directing them to whatever else support that there is that we can give. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGinn, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you. Item 10 minutes of Cabinet, page 65. The minutes of the meeting of the Cabinet are here for information to know. Thank you. Item 11, holding the Executive to account. Item 13, for Part A of this item, Council will receive portfolio updates from the Leader of the Council in regards to collaborative working with West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and from Councillor Mather in her capacity as Cabinet Member for the Armed Forces. Oral questions, can I have please? Thank you. Oral questions or comments to Cabinet Members on their portfolios and on Cabinet minutes will be Part B. A, Cabinet Member for Portfolio Update. Can I now invite Councillor Pando and Mather to present their updates? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Let's hope this technology works. I've been told that I just need to press a button that goes forward, so hopefully this will work. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'm conscious that time is ticking on, and I hope that I can do this item some justice. When I was preparing this presentation, I was wondering that we've got some members who have been here for quite a long time, and they probably know a lot about the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and we have some newer members, and I'm going to hopefully try and balance the information I'm going to give, but I'll be more than happy to take questions. What I'll do is I'll talk about what the Combined Authority does, a brief history of how we've got here, and I'll also then focus on the challenges that we're facing under the report that Councillor Martin Bolt referred to in terms of how the Combined Authority is actually trying to manage the envelope of finances within the current crisis. And what I'll do is I'll try and conclude by just giving you a quick snapshot of where we are in Kirklees. Mr Mayor, most of you will know that we are probably the most centralised country in Europe, and that's why having a devolution deal is very, very important and has been for several decades under different guises of different governments, Labour, the Coalition and the Conservatives. And to be honest with you, when George Osborne got his blueprint out regarding what devolution can look like, and we saw the Manchester Combined Authority East Midlands and various other places, we, as the Leeds City region, were left behind. And it was really important that we actually started to rebalance our local economy. Because Whitehall control does not work. It doesn't matter which government is in power. We have to make sure that we get that power back at a local level. And that's why to have a regional and local impact, the only way you can do that is to actually give money at a local level. Because we know our communities, we know our places. And at the same time, we know where the inequalities lie. And that's the best way we can actually address the inequality, be there in Denbigh or in Batley West, because there are inequalities everywhere. There are pockets everywhere. So don't be under the illusion that this is just about one particular area. It's across the piece. West Yorkshire's contribution to the bang for our pound is actually very, very good. Because each pound we put in, we actually generate a lot more in terms of gross domestic product at a local level. But the only way productivity that is hampered at a local and regional level can be addressed is more devolution. Okay, this is just a brief history of what we're trying to do. 1974, that's when local government reorganisation took place. Before that, we had the West Yorkshire County Council. And when that was abolished, we made sure that the West Yorkshire Passenger Transport Executive continued until 2014. Yorkshire Forward, under the Blair government, brought in £277 million into our region to drive investment, drive growth and drive productivity. And at the same time, the Leeds City region was formed and the local enterprise partnership was formed in 2011. Because we'll probably remember when the coalition government came in, Yorkshire Forward was abolished, and that then created a lot of uncertainty in terms of how we can actually punch above our weight at a regional level. And there was a report that was carried out by Michael Heseltine that you need to actually put in that regional governance structure, and that's when Leeds Enterprise Partnership, Local Enterprise Partnership was formed. 2012, you also remember, under Theresa May, we had the Police and Crime Commissioner structures formed, and at the same time, there were talks about how we can devolve more, but that didn't come to fruition. 2014 to present, we had the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which had transport powers and economic development powers. And the previous chair of the Local Enterprise Partnership, Roger Marsh, he managed to galvanise the political stakeholders and the private sector stakeholders, and we managed to actually do some great work under the Leeds City region. And there was talks about how we can actually take devolution forward as One Yorkshire. One Yorkshire was all about getting the 22 local authorities within Yorkshire and Humber to work together, and we still meet on a regular basis. And through various connotations, various negotiations, we talked about the Leeds City Region Partnership to have 11 local authorities do a devolution deal, but eventually we managed to negotiate by continuously going down to Whitehall, speaking with the then Secretary of State James Brokenshire, who's no longer with us. Unfortunately, he passed away, and Robert Jenrick and Simon Clarke. But then we got the Chancellor, who's now the Prime Minister. There I am with my other West Yorkshire comrades, with Rishi Sunak and Simon Clarke, and we managed to sign a fantastic devolution deal that actually put West Yorkshire and Kirklees on the map. Having said that, as soon as that took place, we went into the pandemic, and the mayoral elections and the local elections were put back. But then the election did take place, and Mayor Brabin was the Combined Authority, West Yorkshire Combined Authority Mayor. Devolution, what did it mean for us? I'll just go through a few figures. £65 million a year on adult education. This is now under the control of local authorities. Under the control of the Mayoral Combined Authority, working with local authorities. But one of the things that's a flaw in the current education budget is before, when you had central government powers, you could via the education budget from one region to another. Now we can't do that. So we've got a £65 million education budget, but if we actually overperform, which we are doing, then That's it. We can't do any more. So that's something to think about. £830 million on integrated transport, £25 million for a new library of the North, British Library of the North, £104 million to manage flood risks, £3.2 million to develop housing pipeline schemes, and we do need these because we've got a local plan and we've got a massive shortage in housing, and that is something that's really welcome. And £317 million for Transforming Cities Fund. And this was something that we actually managed to get more than our fair share, because one of the deals that I did was, if we are going to sign up to the deal, we want the lion's share of the Transforming Cities Fund. And £38 million a year for the next 30 years to drive growth, plus get more resources into our SMEs and our businesses within West Yorkshire. At the same time, the Police and Crime Commissioners all came in to the Combined Authority. And this was a really, really welcome measure, because we had 10 years of austerity, and it was really a timely moment that we actually did sign a deal. And just as you sign the deal, what's happened is we get the cost of living crisis, inflation, interest rates going up through the roof. You know, I'm hoping that this is only a short-term blip, because you remember austerity, the worst time in austerity, we had £54 million savings to make at that moment in time. We were a bigger organisation, but since then we've lost over 1,000 staff. A lot of our senior management team left because we restructured our organisation to make it more sort of like leaner. And I don't know how much more we can cut from what we've already doing. And that's where I want to just touch on the role of the Combined Authority. Again, I don't want to go through a lot of detail, but the role of the Combined Authority is it's got 5 leaders, plus the other local authorities have got Lib Dem, Conservative
Councillor Pinnock, can you let the leaders
representation,
speak, please?
And we've also got a private sector member, Mark Roberts, who's the new chair of the LEP, who actually sits on that committee. And within that framework, we've got 6 subcommittees: business, economy, innovation, which I chair, climate, energy and environment, and employment, skills, culture, heritage and sport, place regeneration and housing, and the transport committee. And through the Combined Authority, we also have the scrutiny committees that hold the complete structure in place through accountability.
Councillor Fonda, you've got 30 seconds.
I thought I didn't have time, Mr. Mayor. Have I got 10 minutes? Have I got 10 minutes already? Right, Mr. Mayor, very, very quickly. Very, very quickly.
I'll let you quickly summarise it.
Mr. Mayor, that leads on to the current gap that we are facing, which is £270 million within the Combined Authority. And the final slide I want to just touch on is what Councillor Peter Davis mentioned. We've got an in-year deficit of £34 million. And if you don't do anything now, what we will...
Mr. Mayor, can I move suspension of standing orders for this to be... It's important what's being said tonight, and I really think people need to listen, so...
I'll second that.
Yeah, second by Councillor Ford. Good. Can we go to the vote, please?
What's the proposal for you exactly?
Suspension standing orders.
Standing orders. No, finish off his thing.
I've nearly finished anyway.
Councillor Fonda, continue, please.
This is quite important, Mr. Mayor, because what Councillor Paul Davis mentioned, we've got an in-year gap of £34 million. £12 million of that is energy cost, £10 million inflation for goods and services, and we've also got £12 million in meeting the increase in demands. And next year, we're facing a gap of £60 million, and the year after that, we're facing a gap of £70 million. So this will mean that we will have to take urgent measures. The measure that we take will have to include members in this chamber. We'll also need to include our communities, our staff, and the trade unions. And to be completely honest, Mr. Mayor, I actually feel really depressed because the way local authority finances are going, not just in this authority, across the UK, there was an article in PFA magazine that 60 councils are on the brink of going bankrupt. And by the end of next financial year, they will have used all the reserves. And I just hope that the autumn statement delivers something a lot more robust and tangible for local government and public services, because we are the frontline defence of our communities. Each and every single councillor in this council chamber, regardless of our politics, does try and do their best, which I know they do, for our local communities. I hope that the settlement on the 17th of November and the December settlement actually puts local government on the front foot and gives us the resources that we need to make sure that we carry on providing public services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Banda. Councillor Mathers.
Hello? Leader? Right. Are we interested, Councillor Pinnock? Can we start? Okay, so thank you, Mayor. It's very timely that I'm doing this presentation during the Remembrance Week. And I took over as Cabinet Lead for Armed Covenant in May of this year. Councillor Masood Ahmed has chaired the Kirklees Armed Forces Covenant for the past 6 years, and I want to thank him for his support in leading and developing the board and its priorities. Due to his increasing responsibility as Mayor, he is stepping away, and we are currently in discussions regarding our member champion. Yeah, no, that's right. The Armed Forces Covenant. Kirklees first signed the Covenant in 2012, and a brief reminder of our commitment and a promise to those who are currently serving or who have previously served in British Armed Forces are not disadvantaged in accessing public services due to their military service. In some cases, special treatment may be appropriate, especially for the injured or bereaved. Thank you. The principles, the Armed Forces Act, I don't know how many of us know that there is an act. The Armed Forces Act recommends that public bodies, when exercising specified public functions in social housing, education and healthcare, must have due regard to the 3 principles of the Covenant. Those principles are recognising the unique obligations of and sacrifices made by the armed forces, that it is desirable to remove disadvantages arising from service people from membership or former membership of the armed forces, and that special provision for service people may be justified by the effects on such people of membership or former membership of the armed forces. So the Armed Forces Covenant has been embedded in law. A statutory duty has been introduced on certain public bodies to ensure that they pay due regard to the Covenant and its principles when carrying out specific public functions in the areas of housing, healthcare and education. The Armed Forces Act places legal obligation on public bodies like ourselves to consider the welfare of service personnel and veterans alike, giving them improving access to crucial services that we all rely on every day. what it means for Kirklees. The legislation requires that the Council consciously consider the Covenant and the principles of the Covenant when developing policy and making decisions in the areas of housing, healthcare and education. Where instances of disadvantage has occurred, the government has found this has often been due to the lack of awareness of the Covenant and the unique needs and experiences faced by those serving in the armed forces. So we need to raise awareness, and it's all about making sure people know that the legislation exists, the duty is there, that we make sure that in everything we do, due consideration is given to those who have served in the armed forces currently or in the past. And where key functions in health, education, social housing are commissioned externally, the Council will need to ensure external providers are aware of the legislation changes and uphold the Council's commitment to the Covenant. The Covenant duty does not mandate specific service delivery outcomes or advantageous treatment. It only requires due consideration of the Covenant principles takes place when exercising relevant functions. And here I just wanted to mention that there has been a lot of work being done in the background, and we are currently making sure that all our services are mindful of this. And I'm just looking at Councillor Khan, who passed me some work on where the groups are asking what about the carers and how we approach the situation around carers. And whilst we do the same as everybody else, we are mindful of any specific needs that this community may have. And we are here, if they haven't been heard, if they have needs, they can come to us or the board to be heard. Thank you. Slide 6. So progress to date. I mean, there's been quite a lot done, and I just wanted to mention some things like we work cross-party, and we work in that manner alongside other partners and very amicably, and the board has gone from strength to strength. And Councillor Ahmed, you've been pivotal to this. Thank you. I want to also mention the board has co-produced the action plan, which is regularly reviewed to ensure it addresses the requirements of the Armed Forces Act. The Council's dedicated website has been redesigned and updated to make it easier to find out what local and national support is available, because I think it's key, again, in raising awareness. And a number of HR policies, including guaranteed interview scheme for veterans, has been put in place. And this is really good. The West Yorkshire Service Pupil Premium Resource Directory, which we're working in collaboration to put together alongside partners. And, you know, when you think that how much resource have we in the council, we are very much reliant on our partnership organisations to sit together to actually deliver meaningful outcomes to this community. Can I have the last? So future priorities, again, members can read, and I'm just going to highlight a few. Membership of the board has been reviewed to ensure council services, partners, charities and NHS are represented. So these are bodies who also hold the key to ensuring that services actually pay attention to this particular community. Produce a directory, which I've said, raise awareness among staff and the council's pledge, the Armed Forces Covenant principles and support, promote training and master classes are available, and added learning to my e-learning is available. Identify key officers, particularly in housing, which I believe we have. Education, we're looking towards, and health, I think we have, Councillor Khan, we have got a champion in health, and that can act as armed forces services champion, so that those coming in, calling on us, we know, rather than go round the whole houses, we know who to contact and do it in a steadfast manner. So I'm just going to leave it here, and thank you very much. And Councillor Ahmed, would you like to say something about your time, 6 years in developing our board? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. I mean, I just want to thank all the members of the board, and especially Jim Dodds, who's been quite pivotal with the board. And I think in terms of what Councillor Mathers has said, it has took us a while to get to where we are. And again, Martin, thanks for your input to the board as well when you've been and emailed us stuff in terms of what we should be looking at in regards to veterans and support through other agencies and services. So that has helped in terms of shaping and putting together the action plan that we've put. And we've got a number of partners and agencies working very collaboratively. I know Councillor Mathers talked about the Bronze Award and the Silver Award. We are already on with the Gold Award. And I was speaking to the Chief Exec earlier on. That is something I'm looking at for 23. Hopefully, as an authority, we should be earmarking that. If not, definitely we should have that for 2024, which marks 50 years of the Council, I believe. So these are things that we've been doing, again, without the help of councillors and members and those other agencies involved. I don't think we would have got to the stage in terms of where the board is. And I think it is difficult to get members to meetings as well. And with the COVID for the last 2 years, it has been extremely difficult, and doing stuff through Zoom and other meetings, it has been a difficult time. So hopefully, now that obviously things are slightly better, we can move on with face-to-face meetings. But overall, there's a lot of work still to be done, and if people do want to have a chat, no doubt, obviously Councillor Mathers is obviously leading on that, and no doubt, hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions for you. But I'd just like to echo and thank Councillor Mathers as well, and those involved.
Say a big thank you for Veena Randavar, who's actually been the person who's been coordinating this as well on my behalf. Thank you.
Okay, we've now finished part A. We will now move to part B, oral questions, comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and Cabinet minutes. Thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks to the Cabinet members for those extensive presentations. Mr Mayor, could I ask, in future when we're getting presentations like that, could the Cabinet members make sure that printouts are available for us on the day? Because I'm sure our communities would value, particularly the latter one, to see what we're doing. So printouts obviously would be very useful, or if they could email them round after. Reflecting on what's been said, could I agree for once with the leader that we need to decentralise, Mr Mayor. We need to see decisions brought down to the lowest level where we can have democratic accountability, because we need to get away with decisions which are not in conformity with what the community wants, so that in Murfield, for example, or Robertstown, when elected members have worked up schemes for their local recreation grounds, where they've allocated funding that we spent 2 years working up, and we've consulted with people, have a robust network, we don't get a reply then from officers who say they've consulted with the Cabinet saying, no, you're not going to do it. We are the elected ones at a local level. We are decentralised. We are ready to make decisions at local level. So when we see this re-centralisation, Shabir, it is kind of hypocritical when you're saying You don't want decentralisation, you don't want centralisation for other things, but you're not willing to give it to the communities under your power. I was grateful to the leader for his overview of the mayoral authority, and you reflected on the passenger transport executive, and there are a few of us here who have been on the passenger transport authority, integrated authority, and various iterations. What we now have on the mayoral authority is the mayor has seen fit to appoint members in each district as question or comment under this part. The mayor has remunerated a member in each district as a transport engagement lead. Now welcome Councillor Butt to that position. Part of the job description is to act as a representative of the combined authority and the mayor on local transport matters in the respective constituent area, act as a local engagement lead on local transport matters in the respective constituent area to ensure local engagement, so that when residents of a large group in North Kirklees, the North Kirklees Bus Passengers Group, ask Councillor Butt to join their group on Facebook and other things, so he's aware of the deplorable issues we've talked about, it's a concern to me, and I'm sure many members, that Councillor Butt declines to join the group. Could I ask through the leader that we can have an explanation of why the remunerated transport engagement lead is not acting as a local engagement lead with our communities? Could I ask through the leader to delegate if Councillor Butt will join with me in organising a meeting in Mirfield to address the inequalities that Arriva have brought about working through the Transport Authority, where people from Heckman Dwight Grammar School are now finding that they have to leave home at 7 o'clock to get to Hecky Grammar because of bus changes, and they have 15 minutes to leave Heckman Dwight Grammar School up High Street, collect their goods. Some of them are musicians, so they have to go to the music labs and collect the instruments and get into the centre of Heckman Dwight. Sorry, am I, Mr Mayor, I'm actually addressing to the member and the chatting at the back. That's very disrespectful, Mr Mayor, to you and to everybody else. Believe me, I know what it is. But, Mr Mayor, so we've got this situation in his ward affecting people. So will he work with me on convening a public meeting in Mirfield? Moving on, Mr Mayor, to the second, I welcome the Armed Forces presentation and pay tribute to you, Mr Mayor, for the work that you've done. We had a lot of words, but no data. Through our scrutiny group, we used to ask what the data was on homeless or rough sleeping members of the armed forces. Post-COVID, we should have been given that. This is a key part of our armed forces. We know that during COVID, thankfully, many people were taken off the streets and supported. What's the situation now? The other thing that's been raised with me, Mr Mayor, is the difficulty that veterans find in getting dental services. So what's happening through the Covenant to ensure that our veterans can receive medical care that they need.
Councillor Boy, you've got 10 seconds, please.
Thank you. And can I pay tribute to Tommy's Lounge, a wonderful venture which has been set up just at the side of the railway station by a former warrant officer who now lives in Mirfield and provides an excellent services. Anybody can go, but it's particularly suited.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Panda, would you like to respond to his first part of his question?
Mr Mayor, before I start, I did unblock you, Martin. And I thought you were going to say thank you, but you didn't. But you've been behaving yourself. Anyway, Mr Mayor, printouts here, I'm sure we can share the presentations. And in terms of the devolution deal, my view is very, very clear. You know, when George Osborne and your government, I won't get too political, got the legislation and the regulations out there, I would have actually had an assembly where we had more representation from local communities, like we have with the London Assembly. But the key driver was to make sure that we didn't get left behind with the devolution deals that were being offered by central government. And I think we probably got one of the better deals than in previous years. And again, that was due to hard work of partnership between local government leaders and national government who did listen how did it come down and give us a good deal. In terms of representation on the Combined Authority, you know, we do have on the Combined Authority the 5 leaders, Tracy and Andrew Waller, who's a Liberal Democrat, Susan Holsworth, who's also a Liberal Democrat. We've got Matthew Robinson from Leeds, who's a Conservative. We've got the leader of the Conservative group in Bradford, Rebecca Paulson. You know, and they are very good, and they are your voice there. You know, because that's what the structure is at the moment. I don't want to comment too much on everything else, what you said, Martin, because, you know, we could be here for the whole night. I don't know, maybe Naheed wants to say something about the Armed Forces Covenant. Naheed?
Councillor Mathers.
Councillor Bolt, I knew that we needed some data, and we're looking into the data provided by the current census. So the figures I have, the figures I have is for census data in 2011, and according to that, I don't have any rough sleepers, but I have the numbers of veterans serving and the children in our district, if you're interested. But as for dental services, it's a national tragedy, travesty, whatever you like to call it. I can't really, you know, magic up any dentists at the moment. But I can give you some numbers for working 5,013 working age veterans between the ages of 16 and 64-year-olds are living within our district. We've got 409 currently serving individuals who have registered addresses within Kirklees, and from the DOFE we know that there are at least 151 children living within the Kirklees district with a current or former serving parent. And as for the presentation, I would have distributed it anyway, but it's useful to know that the councillors are actually interested and they will get the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Watson.
I'll address my comments to Councillor Mather and start by saying I thought that was an excellent briefing. I thought the level of detail that you covered there was very good in terms of the work of the board and so forth, because this is important stuff. Councillor Bolt has touched on issues that veterans have regarding medical services and things like that. And, you know, I think it's important that we look at these things at a local level and do what we can, because when we have a government whose incompetence runs to the level of being able to spend £7 million a day on 4-star hotels, but veterans can't get dental treatment, then we're not in a good place. And I think it's also important that we don't just think about this once a year around November. And I find this very interesting. I travelled to the United States in September on an exercise, 3-week exercise, and the whole culture regarding veterans there is completely different. And I think if there's anything that we can do as a council to change the culture over here, then we should be doing it. For example, we boarded every aircraft first. We went on before the first-class passengers because we were serving military personnel. And as we got on, people said, thank you for your service. Now, actually, I don't give a monkey's whether I get on a plane at first or last. But the point that I would make there is that that was indicative of the esteem that members of the armed forces are held in over there. But we don't do that over here. So I think it's very important that this board works, and it works well. And I've already had discussions with yourself and the Chief Executive about this. And my suggestion, and I repeat it now, would be that actually we take this to the next level. And we look to get somebody in to chair this board, to drive it forward, and that will resource them. And if that means paying them a couple of days, a month, or a day, a week's wages or whatever, then we should do that. We should effectively have a professional. And there are plenty of ex-military people who would be very well committed. They're very good at organising things, very good at driving things. And I think if we had that kind of modest investment in this, then we could really raise the profile of this board, the work that it does, the work that council is doing, and importantly, the importance of veterans in the area and their needs. So thank you very much for that briefing.
Councillor Mather.
Councillor Watson, as someone who has serving members, my nephew's currently in the Marines, I know how it feels. I have other members overseas in the armed forces, and I do think respect at all times, not just in the weeks following the remembrance occasion. I do think that in my services, maybe I think we need to pay attention, although we are currently doing that. As for getting on the planes and buses and things first, I don't have any controls. But we are, you'd be happy to know we've got a small budget put aside which will allow us to do some more work, and we can discuss other issues, and I welcome members coming to me with any ideas they may have, and I believe this board is going to go from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mother. Councillor Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Councillor Pandor, you're going, I believe, to the Combined Authority Finance Committee tomorrow to discuss the transport schemes on the sort of the pause list. And one of the schemes on the pause list is the Mirfield to Dewsbury to Leeds scheme. Unfortunately, part of that scheme is actually an important capacity improvement at the Shawcross Junction. And all surrounding the Shawcross Junction, there's strategic development allocations in your local plan, like Chidswell, 1,500 homes plus employment, large allocations at Suthill and so on. And I think it's very important that those, that the infrastructure is delivered to support those schemes if they go ahead. So can you provide any assurance now that the Combined Authority isn't going to leave residents in Shawcross and surrounding areas with hundreds more homes without the supporting infrastructure? Or can you raise that specific junction at Shawcross at the meeting tomorrow morning and come back to me on that? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Panda.
Thank you. I will try my best, but I don't have a magic wand that I can wave and resolve the £270 million funding gap within the Combined Authority as of now. If we carry on with the projections we have, that gap is going to get bigger. And that's why I said that we have to take immediate action. And it's not just a Leeds Road scheme. I've just got a few schemes here I'll just mention. Cooper Bridge scheme, Ainley Top, Huddersfield Town Centre, Huddersfield Station, A629. But the bit you mentioned around the Leeds Road, Chidswell, that's why it's so important, Mr. Mayor, that we do get the investment zone. Because that investment zone money, if it's additional money, is so important to actually bridge them gaps. It's only an expression of interest at the moment. I hope the government fulfills their ambition to actually see that through. Because if we can do the development there, which is already the local plan, it's already well advanced in terms of the planning process, that will open up the corridor towards Middleton, because Leeds have also got a massive plan on their side, on the other side of the M62. And that will open up so much opportunities for employment and regeneration and resources for Kirklees. I can't promise you, but I am doing my best. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Panda. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask a question to the leader, but in a little preamble to that, I would like to quote another council leader who's facing a £75 million budget shortfall. This has led to his council freezing staff recruitment, delaying investment in infrastructure projects, and dramatically reducing heating and lighting bills in council properties. He said, all the work we do will be under threat if we don't make drastic cuts across all services to balance the books, as we are required to do by law. That will be the reality if the government does not act to protect local government. Quite obviously, a bankrupt council can do none of these things, and we have no choice now but to make the savings that will inevitably hurt people. Those are the words of John Hart, who is a Conservative leader for Devon County Council. And I don't want to be in this chamber over the next few months and hear members from opposition parties have the audacity to criticise this administration in any way for its fiscal responsibility, or have the brass neck to call us irresponsible. I remember Conservative members chose a Prime Minister who came in and wrecked the economy and ran away, leaving this country and our future generations to pick up the tab. That was 3 weeks ago. The myth that the Conservative Party is the party of financial stability has been well and truly destroyed, and with the autumn statement likely bringing more cuts to public services, the message is quite clear that the Tories nationally are bankrupting local councils and pushing Kirklees to the edge. And if local opposition parties were in control, we would probably have been tipped over the edge years ago. My question to the leader is how, with against such a backdrop, the measures proposed by Kirklees compare to other councils, and how are others faring in the current economic crisis? Thank you.
Councillor Panda.
Councillor Tyler Hawkins for that question. Mr Mayor, I mentioned earlier on nearly 60 councils at risk of running out of money next year. This article was produced by PFA on the 6th of October, and the headline was, "The soaring cost of living combined with a decade of austerity could see up to a sixth of English councils fully deplete their resources by 2023-24 without substantial spending cuts," experts have warned. So it's not a good news story, Mr Mayor, the way we see things developing. And that's why what we're doing is we're reviewing our spend. Local authorities up and down the country have already cancelled events. Leeds, Wakefield, Calderdale have actually done a lot of things recently in terms of fireworks and bonfires and events that were taking place that were cancelled. And the LGA is actually lobbying very, very hard on a cross-party basis to make sure that we do get a funding settlement that we deserve and we need. The scale, depth and breadth of the cuts is just completely unprecedented. And that's why the autumn statement on the 17th of November is critical. But Mr Mayor, what we are doing is we're doing our best. We are trying to be prudent. We always are prudent. We're transforming our services. On the back of the previous pandemic and the cost of living crisis now, and before that, the austerity, we took out £200 million from our organisation. That left our council with a workforce of 1,000 people less. And we're just trying to get something back in there, but we're now having to freeze our vacancies. There's a lot of talking we need to do with our staff. There's a lot of talking we need to do with our unions. But we're very clear as an administration, and I'm sure members will share the same feelings as I do. We need to protect the most vulnerable. We need to make sure children's services is safeguarded, because children are our future. Safeguarding issues, again, they are massive, and we need to make sure that we don't...
Councillor Panda, it's 9 o'clock. I would like to close the meeting and go home as well.
On frontline services, Mr Mayor, we have to make sure we protect them. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.